At Epic Bible College, our focus is family. You're not just a seat in a chair there, you become a part of our heart.
Our role as leaders is to equip others to do ministry. You learn so that you can teach others in your ministries.
I could not teach anywhere else because I throw the Bible into everything that I do.
We were not all from the same denominational background, with the same culture. That was irrelevant.
People care about you, about me. I feel like a family here.
It's real study and it's real late night. It's college. But at the same time, if you combine that with the touch of God in a person's heart, that's really what makes it worthwhile.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. It's an honor for us to invite you to River City Christian Church, and thanks so much for being part of our Security Summit. I'm Mark Durkin, and I am blessed to be the general manager of our 4 radio stations. I work with some of the greatest people you could ever be blessed to work with, and I'd like to thank Ann Meyer and Matt Bijou and our whole team that has put on this event for you today. If you join me in thanking them, that'd be great. They traditionally give me all kinds of announcements to make, and I only get through half of them because I get frightened up here. As you can tell, I'm kind of camera shy. This gentleman who is dressed to notice is one of my dearest friends, and this is Pastor Ron Harden. In case smoke fills the building today, we'll follow his shoes. They glow. They glow in the dark. We can't do this without great sponsors. And Epic Bible College and Graduate School has been one of our longtime partners forever and ever. Pastor Ron, thank you again for your support of the station and all our efforts. I'm going to ask the pastor to say a little bit about the college and then also open us with a prayer if you don't mind. We also want to thank the Sacramento Training and Security Center for all that they've done to be a participant. We want to thank the Better Business Bureau. They have these very cool sunshade screens that you might have walked by when you came in. So if you'd like one, raise your hand and they're going to bring it to you right now. For anybody who wants one, they're going to take just 30 seconds. So guys, run around. I don't know where you're at, but they're going to bring them. I had given them a forewarning on that. So if they don't get to you, you go back to their table. They've got more of these, and they have a nice logo on them, and they look fantastic. Other sponsors that I want to thank are the Church West folks. Charlie and his team, fabulous people, just wonderful to work with, and the services they provide are tremendous. Who am I forgetting, Ann? You saw them on the logos. I think we got them all. I do want to ask you a couple things. The way this event came about, I want to just share with a quick story. We typically do a golf tournament to honor our pastor friends and partners, and this year it was on our heart to try something different because this subject of security, we live in a world of evil. I don't think there's anybody in here that will not suggest that we don't, and churches are under attack, so we thought we need to do something about that. We know businesses are under attack. We just saw that over at Google. And personal security. You can't even go to a Waffle House without being under attack. And so it was on our heart to do something. And one of my best friends is Chaplain Mindy, who told me that many people take security as a God will look out for me type of happening, and that he's just going to take it. Well, I know he does, but at the same time, you got to do something about it. So we decided to step into the breach and do something about it too. So before I bring the pastor, let me give you a phone number. We do want your questions today because we will have a panel, and we have switched things around a little bit on the agenda as these things are all kind of fluid. Don't forget that this is a jam-packed 3 hours. We're going right straight through 12:30, but you're welcome to get up. This is like you're sitting in your living room. You can't shout back at the TV, I'll tell you that much. but you're welcome to go upstairs to the ladies' room and the men's room if you need to go, and there's food over there, so just make yourselves comfortable today. But here's a phone number for questions, 916-915-8103. You can get your questions, you text those, and we'll get to your questions later on when we have our panel. Now, let me bring, without delay, Pastor Ron to say a few words, and then we'll open it up and get started. And then I'm going to introduce Pastor Mindy. Last four numbers were 8103. That's 916-915-8103.
Well, thank you, Mark. Would you give it up for Brother Mark today? Thank you for all of his leadership. Thank you, brother, for your years of faithfulness and all you do for all of us. I am just stoked to be with you. In fact, I think you all are totally epic. Can I just say that to you? The word epic means grand, majestic, and heroic. We believe that's what God wants for our lives, for the lives of our students, our alumni that are in ministry all over the world. And can I just say a special thank you to all the pastors that are here today. If you're a pastor here today, would you just wave back at me? Come on. Thank you. Give it up for those rascals. I mean those mighty men and women of God. We'll have 200 different churches that will trust Epic with their people this year. In fact, you saw on the video there that Epic is very diverse. We'll have 40 different denominations that will be with us, 40% Caucasian, 30% African American, 20% Hispanic, 10% Asian and Pacific Islander, and some of our students are like me, Hamsham and Japheth. Come on, we've got everybody. It looks like heaven. In fact, if you're interested from the associates to the doctorate and everything in between, online, on-site, or combo, that's Epic. In fact, I think I hear a commercial coming on right now. No, we want to encourage you. We've been around for 44 years. If you've ever heard of Trinity School of the Bible, Trinity Life Bible College, Epic Bible College is that. And my wife and I have been privileged to give 35 years of our life to Epic Bible College and Graduate School. I still teach as president because I love students. You do? Yes, I do. And there's something about the power of God's Word. So come and see us back at the table there. I want to take just a brief second to introduce Dr. Greg Hartley. He is my academic dean. Dr. Greg, if you'd stand up. He served 29 faithful years with me. Come on, in Jesus' name. That's what Epic is all about. We want to give you the best in spiritual, practical, and academic training. Our 65 faculty and staff are committed to the Lord. We want to see the best for everybody that is there. And we're glad to partner with you on this today to see God do great things. Can I just pray a blessing upon you, your families, your business? Amen. Father, thank you right now in the mighty name of Jesus. We bless you, Lord, for your goodness to us, your peace, your strength, your provision, your help. And God, give us wisdom today. Give us every area we need. And Lord, every teacher, every panel member, let them be anointed by you. And Father, we give you praise in Jesus' mighty name. And I know you love the Lord, so just say amen. Amen. Thank you all. God bless you.
All right, we're getting very close to the actual start now. If you don't mind, by a show of hands, can you share with me if you are a pastor or here representing a church? We want to kind of get a general sense. Ann, take a look around. Count every, 1, 2. All right, thank you. If you're here representing a small business, raise your hand. That would be great. Terrific, appreciate it. And if you're just a listener who enjoys our 4 radio stations and that's where you heard it, please raise your hands also. All right, that's tremendous. That helps us when we design these things so we know what to do next. Well, let me tell you, as I said to Chaplain Mindy, she said to me, just introduce me as your friend. Well, let me tell you, it's a great honor to have Mindy as my friend. I did not know until I read her bio that she's been married 47 years. Congratulations to you on that. That's tremendous. As you can see, this thing is lengthy. I'm going to start at the beginning. Friends, the Law Enforcement Chaplaincy does incredible work. It's a nonprofit right here in Sacramento for the region. They do amazing work. They're right in the thick of things, especially when something goes terrible. And what they see out there in the field is probably stuff that you and I will never see our entire life. But Chaplain Mindy and her team of 150 go out and they counsel people at the worst moments that they're experiencing in their life. She truly is one of God's angels walking this earth. Welcome, Pastor and Chaplain Mindy, to the stage.
Well, are you ready for this today? We have been praying for you. You are in the right place. And I got to tell you, before we start this summit, can we give praise to God that they finally caught the East Side serial rapists? Yay! 40 years, these officers and people and detectives have looked for this man. So I have had the privilege of working with the detectives and the cold case and the families, and I'm going to tell you, there was sobbings of joy yesterday during that public recording of it. So we're excited about today. June 17th, Wednesday, 2015, we had a church massacre in Charlotte, South Carolina. This was really something very near and dear to my heart because 1 year exactly to the day, I was in that church with those people. They made me shrimp and grits that night. And our team was there worshiping God, having prayer, and loving on one another. It was that heavenly experience right here on earth that you get every once in a while. So when I woke up to hearing that news that day, I was crushed. I knew these people by name. They were not just 9 people that were killed. But I've got to tell you, I became enraged in a righteous, enraged mode of, we got to teach the church better, Lord. Help us have a venue. Help us a way that we can let the church know. We used to think our home was safe. We used to think our schools were safe. And we used to think our sanctuaries were safe. And they can be if we're a part of the safety. So as Mark said, we can't walk around anymore saying God will take care of us. Yeah, he will. That's why we're here today. He expects us to use our mind, our wisdom, to be able to do the things that he wants us to do, to make our people that come expecting to be safe, to worship, to be able to come there and not only feel safe, but be safe. You are the gatekeepers. You today will be empowered, equipped, and encouraged that right where you are, we can start today making your church even better and safer. And all your pastors here, I want to tell you, you are the shepherd. You bring your people around you that will do this. You stay anointed and teach the word, okay? We love our pastors. You are called to teach the word. But let your people that are called to this be those armor bearers, if you would, so that you can do what you need to do. In all my years of working with victims, every single one of them has said to me, I never thought this would happen to me. Every one of them. Church, businesses, families, we can't say that anymore. We won't say that anymore. You know what we're going to say? If something happens, I know what I'm going to do. Isn't that more empowering? Isn't that more, I got control of this instead of, I don't know what I'm going to do? But there's steps we can take. And every one of these things that we talk about today, I want you to still keep your welcome mat out to the church and to the family. Absolutely, the welcome mat needs to be there. People are seeking God, and that's why we want them to come. But we're talking about the predator. Those are the thieves that want to steal and kill and destroy. And they have no desire to come in to seek God. They're coming in to seek God's people. Okay, can we get that? So this is what this summit's about, how we can prepare and know what that's about. I'm going to tell you one golden nugget right now. You will stop looking for bad people. You will stop looking for bad guys. You will start looking for bad behavior. Isn't that amazing? When we start looking for bad guys, we start profiling and stereotyping and putting people in wrong boxes. But if we start looking at bad behavior, I don't care if it's Aunt Bessie, who's 84 years old and acting up, to a stranger that comes in, and we will not tolerate him, her, hurting our people. It's as simple as that. And when you can stand by, it wasn't what he looked like or she acted or she looked like, it was how they acted. You are standing strong with your insurance company, with the media, with everything involved. Cool? We are on the right track. Real quick, going back one more time to that South Carolina church, I could run down step by step the red flags that you would see them today and go, oh, I wouldn't let that happen. But would you? Because we go into this mode of, I want to help everybody. I want to make sure everybody's comfortable. So I'll overlook at that and I'll overlook that. Can you imagine somebody walking in? First of all, this was a very, it was an African American church downtown South Carolina, doing prayer on a Wednesday. How many people come to our own churches on Wednesday night? So that's unusual that this white kid, 24 years old, comes with this huge fanny pack. 24 years old, fanny pack, come on. Are we seeing some Steins here already? And when he walks in, he says to the first usher who says, son, welcome. And I can hear his voice because I knew him. I met him. And he said, son, welcome. And guess what this punk did? Can I say punk? No, I can say creep. Because in Genesis it says, we shall have dominion over things that creepeth. Come on, I want to hear you roar. Amen. Anyway, so the creep goes to the usher. Where's the pastor and what's his name? Let me tell you, pastors, you better teach your ushers not to be telling them what your name is if they don't know it already, right? And then he sat at the table with the pastor. And then he argued scripture. Are you seeing red flags, guys? And then when they went to their final time of praying, and they all bowed their heads, that's when he stood up, reached in his fanny pack, and started shooting. 9 died. I'm telling you what, that's not going to happen here. That is never going to happen here because you all are going to use that scripture that says, watch and pray. When everybody else in your church bows their head, you will be watching. Because you know the only other ones that aren't watching is the creeps. Okay, I digress. Let's get started. So my first speaker, great man of God, Byron Rung, has been a peace officer since June 6, 1997. He has held assignments within his agency in patrol, gang enforcement, civil disturbance, and community-orienting policing, warrant service, dignity protection, and special investigations. Byron has been assigned to protection threat assessment since November 1st, 2011. He has assessed, investigated, and assisted in excess of 4,000 inappropriate contacts, communications, suspicious circumstances, and threats relating to officials. He has presented threat assessment training for numerous law enforcement agencies, staff of public officials, staff of the judiciary, and the threat assessment community. And Byron is an Association of Threat Assessment Professionals, certified threat manager, graduated from Gavin D. Becker's Advanced Threat Assessment and Management Academy. He's certified in infrastructure protection by Texas A&M, and Byron has also attended the Robert Presley Institute of Criminal Investigation. So, why I asked him to come here, as expert as he is, he's a member of Creekside Church in Elk Grove, California, where he leads their church security ministry of 30 volunteers. Would you Clap with me, applaud with me, Byron.
Good morning. Hi, I apologize for the bio, but I do think it's always important to kind of know a little bit about your speaker since he's going to be up there giving you all this information. So a lot of times, like, who is this guy? What gives him the authority to have all these opinions? So number one, bios are important, but more importantly, I just want to point out that I've been truly blessed with all the training experiences and opportunities, abilities that I have are only because of the grace, mercy, and blessings of the Lord Jesus Christ. And he's blessed me so that I can serve others today, my church, and any other churches that need my help. So it's an honor to present to you guys today. So what I'm going to talk about today is the first PowerPoint presentation will be about kind of what's happening in the world, what's happening nationally, what's happening locally, and why do we need to really focus on protection. Next slide. So before we play this video, I apologize. Everything I ever talk about, anything I ever have in a presentation, I promise you there is a point to it. This is very graphic, very violent. So just be aware, I will limit to the amount of footage we watch, but I'd like to start off with this video.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, man. Double espresso macchiato with extra foam?
Sure, that'll be $4.50.
Extra foam, man.
Got it.
It's not what I ordered, man.
Yeah, it is.
Give me back my money, man.
I'm not giving you
back my money.
I'm not giving you your money back.
You want to give me back my $4.50?
No.
No?
No.
All right, man.
Here, take a fucking roll while you're going out the door.
We care about our fellow man. Anything that we can to keep them alive. So the animals like kill.
Okay, that's enough. So as I said, I apologize for showing such graphic video. Has anyone ever seen that movie before? Clips of that movie? Normally it's nobody. This is a movie called Rampage, not to be confused with there's one that's out with Dwayne Johnson. This is called Rampage, and I give these presentations all over the state to various groups. Some are civilians, some are law enforcement, a lot of government employees, and I start off with this video for a couple of reasons. Number one, to point out the seriousness of the training. You know, we all attend different types of training for work, and oftentimes people are nodding off, falling asleep, not taking the training serious. So number one is like, this is why you're here. We don't need these needless acts of violence occurring. The other reason is to kind of open your eyes to what's going on in society. So this right here, this is a new genre in the movie industry. It's called the anti-hero sentiment, which in this wonderful genre of movies, the protagonist, which is normally a good guy, is a bad guy. And in this case, the protagonist has a problem with society as a whole and government and kills tons and tons of people. I like to cut the video because it gets horrible. It's so excessive, it's ridiculous. He kills, women in a beauty salon that are not doing anything. He kills children. And in the end of the movie, he walks off into the sunset. That's the happy ending. And this movie's been downloaded in its entirety on YouTube hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times. And what does that mean? That means we have people that are over time being brainwashed, watching movies like this, having issues with people or society or government, and then they think this is the answer to my problem. I can be a hero and kill all these innocent people. So that's why I like to show this, just to see what's really going on out there, what's affecting society. So that's the movies, right? So let's move on to reality. If we can show the next video, please.
Instantly came in to kill.
That was the closest thing to a war zone.
You never, ever, in some ways, get over it.
You think, is this a killer?
It shot off my finger and went down in my arm and just exploded. First thing she said, how many did he kill?
We didn't want another Lee Harvey Oswald on our hands.
The fear didn't happen until after I was shot at.
I felt responsible for so many years.
There was something in him that was being repelled by something in me.
Told my husband, I said, I've been shot.
The pain never dulled, it never went away. The hurt was, it's the same magnitude.
He brought in some rope and he said, I'm going to tie you to the chair.
It did take my faith away.
Why did God allow this to happen?
It was like I'd stepped out of the holiest place I'd ever been into sheer darkness and anger.
Could have prevented it. I would have.
Had anybody ever heard of that before? Dangerfield, Texas? A lot of people have never heard of it. Usually a few have. It didn't get much media attention then, but I mean, it definitely was the first time that it drew attention on an attack on a place of worship. And in this scenario, this guy's name was Alvin Lee King. And this guy was arrested for molesting his daughter. And when it came to his jury trial, he ended up losing, and he went to a local church to ask members of the congregation to be a character witness for him. And they were like, well, we don't know you. We can't vouch for you. So he ends up being convicted, and he's pending going to prison. And he ends up attacking this church. He kills, that little girl was the worship pastor's daughter. And I bring this up because, number one, it's not new protecting churches. West Coast, it pretty much is. But in the South and a bunch of areas, the middle of the country, they've been protecting their churches for quite a while. The other thing I want to point out is this guy, Alvin Lee King, he could have gone after anybody, right? He could have gone after the police officers that arrested him. He could have gone after the judge, the jury, his wife. He could have gone after a number of people, but the people least involved in his whole case were just members of a church who didn't know him and weren't going to testify for him, yet they were the people that he ended up targeting. So just to be aware, it doesn't necessarily have to be just that your church has a message. It could be some other grievance that that person may have. Next slide. So now what's going on internationally? I have to pay a lot of attention to news for my work, but take a moment, take a glance up there if you can see it. A lot of this stuff that I put up there was from a couple years ago when I first put this up before we were starting to have a lot more attacks here in mainland. But if you're not aware of it, outside of the United States, Christians are really, really, really being attacked. You know, we take for granted here that we can come and worship and not be too scared about of our safety, where there are places across the Middle East where people are being exterminated solely because of their belief in God. Everyone remembers the one that happened in France with the Catholic priest that his throat was slashed in church. Probably some of the most horrific scenes I saw were, you know, the Christians lined up on beaches who were beheaded, or the Christians who were burned alive. Churches are constantly being attacked over there on Sunday during worship. So then now we talk about what's happening in the mainland. Next slide. Right? So what happened was, and anything I talk about here is open source. Nothing is law enforcement sensitive, but a bunch of the terrorist groups put out online publications. One of them happens to be Dabiq, which is up there, which was the ISIL online publication to recruit new believers and kind of like a how-to manual. Well, let's backtrack. So this is the same manual that was put out years ago with how to make bombs, how to make pressure cooker bombs, how to make vehicle-borne IEDs, so vehicle bombs. It explained, hey, if you think bombs are too difficult, go rent a van and run over a bunch of people. Does that sound familiar? Next, it was, hey, go grab some knives from your counter. Doesn't matter, just go stab people. Well, all across the world, attacks have been by people from extremist organizations with edged weapons. And so now this same magazine that has obviously got the word out in the summer of 2016, this one, they put out this image, and you can see it's a cross. The title of this publication was Breaking the Cross, and the focus was to attack places of worship in the Western Hemisphere. So obviously that should be a big concern. And after that, I believe that winter, they had actually put out a link on that same, on the same publication and online access, a link to all the churches in the United States. And they basically encouraged all their followers, hey, just find what town you live in, click on this link, find the church that you are close by, and go attack it. A small stat towards the bottom, I don't know if you can see it, and it was a stat from 2015. And I mentioned before internationally about how Christians are really being persecuted. Well, to give you an idea, 90,000 Christians worldwide were killed in 2015 solely for the reason that they believed in God. We mentioned South Carolina. Mindy mentioned that already. We have the horrific shooting that happened in Texas. You know, so we have lots of stuff that's happening. We had one in Fresno that was the same day as the one that happened in Texas. So we have a lot of stuff going on in the news that you read with attacks on places of worship. So we talked about kind of what the culture is like with movies, historically, now what's happening internationally and nationally. Now let's move locally, right? Because stuff happens, next slide, stuff happens all over the place, but it's not going to happen to me. If we can move past this slide. So I'm going to bring up some cases. I'm not going to lie, some of them come from my church, but they're different case studies, or I would call them, they're just incidents that I'm going to talk about, and they're things that are happening locally, okay? So this one, I won't use any names of anybody that we ever deal with, and none of the pictures are real, as you can tell, because we didn't investigate Jim Carrey. So we had a gentleman that had come to our third service, and in the middle of the third service, he leaves, and when he exits the atrium, he turns around with his phone and starts taking pictures of the front of our church, or front of a church, our church, and our security guys happen to come by and see the gentleman taking pictures, and immediately he has his phone, he pulls it in close, right? That should be a sign already, you know, like, if I was taking a picture of a church and someone walked by, I'd probably just say good morning and your church is beautiful, right? So the fact that he's pulling it back in, that's highly suspicious. He moves really quickly to his car, and he ends up looking like he's going to leave, and he goes to the back of the church, and the security follows him out there, and now he's taking pictures of the back of the church, right? The security makes contact, very polite, kind, and says, you know, how can we help you? He basically goes on to ask questions like, hey, I was in your sanctuary, and I noticed there were some basketball hoops in there. Who plays on those hoops? Children. When do the children play in the sanctuary? And mind you, he has no car seats in his car. And the guys that were out there, you know, I always like to listen to laymen talk about what seems suspicious, because I think I'm suspicious of everybody, right? So these are other people that are members of the church, and you know, they might not be in law enforcement, and they're like, well, he seemed like he was really faking the part of, he had excessive stickers of American flags all over his car, like taped on, and excessive military stickers, right? So it's on the day in question, he actually was wearing an out of style suit. That's why I put that picture from Dumb and Dumber. So that's another thing that I'll talk about later as far as what you're looking for situational awareness. But all of these things in totality were a total concern, right? Usually what I tell everyone is, if you talk to somebody, try to figure out whatever their story is or whatever their behavior is, could it be any benign, or is it all totally suspicious, right? So this guy, what we know is that he's potentially probing security, and he's asking questions about kids at the church. And so they come in, and they're telling me what happened. They tell me the guy's name, and I'm like, oh, it was a really unique name. And I'm like, oh, that sounds really weird. Do you have a picture? And I see the picture, and I had just investigated that guy because he had been probing security at a high-level state facility, right? So what you have there is, what's the correlation? The only correlation is you have two places that are high-value targets. So that's highly suspicious. So like in a situation like this, we don't go crazy with our security team. We utilize the local PD, and we generated a suspicious activity report. That's what, it's part of the Joint Terrorism Task Force, whatnot. We have the ability to generate reports so that all the agencies can share it and look into cases. So that one was definitely suspicious and concerning. And if there's any questions, you can always raise your hand and let me know. Next one. This particular individual came into the first service on a Sunday, and it was a warm, like transition day between spring and fall, and he's wearing a trench coat, right? You should already know that I get made fun of because I wear overcoats all the time because I'm just actually cold all the time. But this guy comes in with a trench coat, and some of the security people recognize that that's odd, so they try to talk to him, but he doesn't want to talk. He sits down in the sanctuary, and I see him sit down because I could tell how he was dressed. It was a little odd. And then during the middle of the service, he starts videoing the pastor giving the sermon, but not only is he videotaping, but he's actually starting to move his camera because I can see him. He's taking pictures of the entire stage in the surrounding area, which is all highly suspicious, especially since our church records everything, so you can go online and watch our services anyways. So he's recording all that stuff, so I communicate with the rest of the team and say, hey, let's see what kind of car this guy drives. And he ends up going outside. When he goes outside, he takes selfies of himself, but from multiple locations. Now, I'm not a selfie guy, but you only need to take one selfie. He's walking all over campus taking selfies with this church in the background, which would be a way of being able to take pictures of the church without necessarily looking like you were taking pictures of the church. He gets back to his car. We try to take a picture of him, and he's aware of us, of the people that were there. And he, if somebody was taking pictures of you, I'm sure he'd probably act like me, like, hi, do I know you? Why are you taking my picture? Whereas all he had was a very stoic, stone-looking face, no response. He gets into his car. He's got paper plates, but it's not a new car. It's dirty, which is another sign that potentially he was hiding his identity, So this is another situation where we know this guy's not dressed the way he should be. He's doing all sorts of odd things. He's doing what we would think is like probing security. And so, again, we have to generate another report that to the police department, and then that gets looked into. I know kind of what happens in some of these cases. For law enforcement people, we have access to different information, but I can't, unfortunately, tell you about the outcome. So the next one, these are all different cases where they're all highly suspicious, right? And so you need to forward that to the police department so that they can look into it. If it seems odd when you see this type of stuff, it's no secret that both domestic and foreign terrorist organizations, that they are probe security everywhere all the time across the country. I've met with many people networking that churches everywhere in the country are being probed by people that are potentially planning attacks, right? So it's your job to spot it ahead of time so we can stop it. So anyways, the next one here, this is a vehicle that ends up stopped at the side of the road near an entrance, the last entrance to the church, at the beginning or the middle of the last service. And this person is Middle Eastern, just one factor, right? Not a deciding factor. Is wearing a hijab, covering her face, just a factor. Just one thing to note. She has her phone out and she's taking pictures of all the cars exiting the church, okay? There's nothing else there. There's a dirt field full of weeds, and there's the church. So all she's doing is taking pictures of cars that are exiting the church. Now, this is an example where I say, well, what would she be doing if she's not probing security and trying to see what's going on with this church? Nothing, right? So this is an example where we actually had a picture. This is not it. If you didn't figure it out, this is not the suspicious van. We had a picture, and we forwarded that, and so that goes, again, into this bank of breadcrumbs for the Terrorism Task Force and other police departments to have clues in case they have similar types of acts. And if not anything else, all this stuff serves as a deterrent. Anytime you make contact with a suspicious person, then you potentially are deterring them from attacking your church. And ultimately, right, I know I start off really negative. This is meant to be kind of negative because it's kind of an awareness thing that what's happening and why we should be concerned, why we need to protect our churches. But ultimately, the next portion of slides I move on to, it's going to show you that we can do this. Protecting the church is totally doable. And if not anything else, not only are you protecting your church, but you have an awesome opportunity for fellowship with the people within that ministry. I put up it's just a clip from an article that happened in the Middle East. And I put it up there because it was, as I talked before about Christians being persecuted, a lot of places in the Middle East, they actually have to form their own little colonies with protection because they don't want to be attacked, so groups of Christians band together. Well, this was a colony in Pakistan, and they were actually attacked by a terrorist organization, and they had their own security team. I believe it was 7 attackers. And one person did get killed in the Christian colony, but that was one of their security people. But of the 7 attackers, all of them were killed. And I'm not condoning being happy if people are killed, but my point is it can work. Bad people can come in, and we can stop it. It can be stopped. And I put a biblical verse at the bottom, which from Nehemiah, which is basically when they were rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem, it was basically everybody then had a sword. Everybody had something with them to protect all of each other, all the followers, and their city. There's all sorts of places in the Bible that definitely justify us protecting not only our church, but protecting others. Next slide. So we don't need to go through, I'm moving on to the next word. We've switched up the program a little. You can move on to the next one. So, as I said, I kind of gave you a real brief overview of why we need to be having security at our churches to protect ourselves. So now we're going to go into how can we do that. Next slide. Question? Yes. It will come at the end of this one too. Thank you. Play the video.
The Police One Academy is your online training solution from law enforcement experts. With access to hundreds of videos, the Police One Academy delivers cost-effective, valuable solutions for your department. Tap into must-have training from the experts at Police One.
I lost my job. I moved out of that state and moved to Colorado, and some people had introduced me to come to church. Something kept telling me that I should be on the security team at the church. You're just a volunteer. You don't wear a uniform or anything. And I was only there for a short 6 months, and then it happened. I wasn't going to go to church that day. I was going to stay home. Till I got up early the next morning, which was Sunday, December 9, 2007. And I was reading my Bible, and I decided to take a break, and I went and looked on the internet, and I had just noticed, just by chance, I noticed a real small sentence in the upper right-hand corner of my computer that said there was a shooting at this Christian facility that I was unfamiliar with in Arvada, Colorado. And even though it was 70 miles or so north of where we were in Colorado Springs, I just got instant chills, and I just knew he was going to come to New Life Church. So I called the director and I said, "Did you hear about this shooting in Arvada?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "I'm coming in." The description of the gunman was very vague, as typical. White male in his 20s, no height or weight, possible beard, possible glasses, and that's pretty much it. At about 5 to 1, I was standing in the front lobby, still very crowded, and a volunteer behind the big round volunteer desk says loudly, "Security." And so I turn around and look at him, and he points toward the front doors, and he said, "That guy says there's something weird going on outside." So I go talk to this man, and he said, "Yeah, there's like a smoke bomb outside the steps." So I was just thinking, should I call the fire department, or what is this device? Is it a dud? Is it going to explode? And still trying to keep everybody back. Some people said it was one white male in a red car, and a couple people said it was three white males in a white car. And this is typical, cops know that we always get different witness information, so I was going to write down, make note of both. And so I went inside, and before I could start writing down the names, before I'd forget, the volunteer said, "There's another smoke grenade outside the cafeteria doors," which was far from where I was standing. And before I could even say another one, I hear this muffled pop, pop, pop noise coming from the east hallway, which was on my left. And the east hallway is over 100 yards long and 30 feet wide approximately. And it is the busiest hallway in the church. So I immediately go over there. And as I'm making my way to the beginning of the east hallway, these loud thundering cracks of a high-powered rifle just start ringing out, and I hear everybody screaming, and someone's like, "Get down, he's got a gun." And I thought that the gunman was inside our church. A taller security guy behind me says, "There he is, Gene. He's coming in the doors right now." Well, the gunman's entering the complete opposite end of the hallway where I stood. So he had been shooting through the doors of the church. So he was shooting into the masses of people. And so I pulled my gun out of the waist of my jeans where I keep it, and I just sprinted down the hallway toward him. And all of a sudden, everyone's gone. There was no one left in the hallway except for me and the gunman. And he's pulling open the second and last set of these heavy glass doors. So I took cover in this hallway on the right that was perpendicular to the east hallway that he was walking down. I put my gun in the high ready, and I was just going to wait for him to come up to me, and I was going to shoot him, perpendicular, and then I'd shoot him. I stepped up to the corner of the hallway, and I shouted at him, "Police officer, drop your weapon." And he turns toward me, and I shot rapidly 5 times and knocked him back completely on his back. And he sits up, and I walk toward him, and I said, "Drop your weapon or I will kill you." and he's shooting at me now. So we're shooting at each other. Obviously, I'm going to keep shooting if he's shooting at me. And then he tried to duck behind this hallway, and I couldn't lose sight of him, because then I'd have another situation. So shot him again for a total of 10 times. And I had told him, drop your weapon. I gave him fair warning, and I just knew that he could kill me, and then he'd kill those other people. So I had to take his life. So another security officer runs up and he said, "Go check the lobby." And he stayed with the body. And so I ran down in the lobby to make sure there was no more gunmen. I checked it and cleared it, and I saw the police cars start to pull up.
Next slide. So that was New Life Church. I know some of the guys from our church have gone there for training recently. But this is what we're going to talk about in this section. Obviously, I showed you the video with "Can we stop this?" But we'll talk about how would you implement security at your church. So for those of you that are administrators or pastors, or from just representing your church and kind of seeing how we would implement a program, we'll go over that really briefly. Talk about like what threat assessment is, and then talk about what you should be looking for, and I'll even talk a little bit about kind of generally speaking how we do things at our church. So, there should be a handout in your folder that has this on there, and if it doesn't, my email will be at the end. You can always email me for it. But these are just, generally speaking, kind of some of the things that you should be looking at if you're considering security at your church. Do you want to have an internal or external detail? In other words, some people, they don't want to worry about it, and they want to pay for a private security company to come keep their church safe. Some places want to have reimbursable contracts with the local police department and have them be there on post or in the parking lot. And then internally, right, do you want to create your own volunteer group of security people? That's what we decided to do at our church. Then, of course, the next part is selecting a leader that's going to ultimately lead the team. I would recommend that it's somebody that has, some foundation in security or protection, so that they know, how to lead people in this type of work. Management buy-in is really, 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 really big. And we've been really blessed with an executive staff that supports the security ministry and keeping everybody safe at church. It's really important, not only from a funding perspective, but communication, and that they can communicate with me or the rest of the ministry and be able to understand what each other's roles are and respect for that. For those of you that are all in Sacramento, the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department, which I don't work for, they do what they call site vulnerability assessments for free. You just need to contact them. You can actually look online under Sacramento Regional Threat Assessment Center, and they will come out to your church and with a bunch of cameras and a handful of people, walk around your campus and decide what improvements need to be made to keep your church even safer. And I mean, from big things to little things, how you lock the doors to bushes and cameras and whatnot. And they give you a nice final product in a binder explaining these are all the things that we observe that are concerning, and these are possible solutions to solving those problems. And so I do recommend that. Then you select your team. It's really important. In our church, we've been in existence now a couple years as far as the security ministry. And really, this is a group of people that the administration needs to trust, because they're going to have access to information that not everybody else knows about. And ultimately, they're there to keep everybody safe. So it's a very, very big responsibility. So you need people that are very responsible and trustworthy. The equipment acquisition, that falls in line with management buy-in and funding, right? So you need appropriate equipment to equip your team with stuff that will help keep the place safe. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on. You need to have training, right? It's not a bunch of Barney Fifes out there that we're just going to hey, we're cool. We can just wear whatever your security equipment is, or whatever shirts you wear, and just walk around like you're the big man on campus. That's definitely not how we operate at our church. But you need training so that everybody knows how to deal with conflicts in the most peaceful way. And also, like for us, we offer hands-on training. We offer training like situational, like how scenario-based training, how to deal with protesters or attackers, stuff like that. So you need ongoing training for everybody. You should liaise with your local law enforcement agency. Have them as stakeholders have buy-in. Like we actually have a great relationship with Elk Grove PD. So we always, if they're in our parking lots, we always encourage them, come in, have a cup of coffee, have a free cup of coffee, hang out, meet some of the members of the congregation. So have them just have a good relationship with the local police department and the church. You obviously have to work out how you're going to schedule everybody depending how many services you have, and be aware, try not to burn out your volunteers. Document stuff. I mentioned communication, and then I'll mention fellowship at the very end. Next slide. So threat assessment. You know, it's used really loosely from like the terrorism fusion centers all over the country to locally, different people use it for different things, but generally speaking, what we're talking about here is the assessment of whether or not somebody is a threat to our church or to an organization, business, or a person. We want to say, is this person exhibiting behavior that's causing us to think that they're going to act out violently, right? So we are trying, threat assessment is looking at suspicious people or certain actions, and then assessing whether or not we really need to be concerned about it. There should be a, let's skip this video. Next one. That was just basically one of the latest people for the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals, the president, talking about how it's basically becoming a standard nationwide, especially after Parkland, all these shootings, that threat assessment is becoming more and more common and necessary. So I'll bore you a little bit with threat assessment topics, right? You have two up here. And these two types of violence are the only two types of violence that occur, period. In cities or in places where there's no humans living there. There's only two types of violence that exist. Impromptu violence is stuff that, you know, I think best characterized as like in the heat of the moment. A good example would be, you know, let's say we have a happily married couple, and the husband says, you know what, I got all my work done for the day, so ask my boss if I can have the rest of the day off. I'm going to surprise my wife. I'm going to grab a bouquet of flowers and a box of candy and take her out to dinner. She's going to be surprised. It's going to be great. You go to the florist, grab flowers. You go to the candy shop, grab a box of candy. You get home, park your car, walking inside. You're like so ready to surprise her. You're the nicest, most awesome husband ever. And then you open the bedroom door and you find that she's having an affair with someone else. And then that husband now turns and grabs a gun out of his bedstand and kills those people. Well, we can all agree in that detailed lead up to what happened, right? He didn't plan on hurting anybody, right? And then in the heat of the moment, the situation happened, circumstances, and he acted in an unprepared fashion, right? That stuff is hard to stop. What we can stop, though, is predatory violence. Predatory violence is the stuff that is pre-planned, or as you hear like in the movies or TV shows, or even if you've done jury duty, like premeditated murder. Premeditated meaning that obviously it was thought out ahead of time. And if something is thought out ahead of time, then that means that they're going to behave certain ways prior to the attack. And if we can see those behaviors prior to the attack, then we could potentially intervene and stop the violence from ever happening. And it sounds great, sounds really fancy like the Minority Report, but actually it does work, and it happens all the time. So moving on. Predatory violence, that was the second one, that's what we're trying to stop. So I talked about stages. This is called the path to intended violence. If you only remember one thing on threat assessment, this is the most well-known, most prolific threat assessment concept that exists. And that is that all attackers go on this continuum. From the bottom left to the top right, they all have a grievance. What's their problem? I'm sure you've seen news stories with people hurting a bunch of people, and that the perpetrator had mental health problems, and maybe they had an issue because the aliens were, terrorizing their brain day and night. It doesn't matter if the grievance is real or not. All that matters is that person has a grievance, because to that person it is real. Ideation is when that person who has a problem thinks that the only answer to my problem is violence, right? A lot of us have issues every day. If you're mad at your spouse, you're mad at the barista at Starbucks, or you're mad at your boss. But we all can get over it, right? We move on. These people, it festers. They can't get over their grievance, and it turns to violence. You know what? It's not going my way, and it's been this way for 6 months. The only way I'm going to get justice is by killing that person. So ideation is violence is the only answer. Research and planning, that's when, right, you're going to research your attack. I talked before about probing security. So as I talked before about events that have happened even locally, right? People taking pictures of the outside of your building or asking questions on the inside about where kids play, where's the Sunday school, and they don't appear that they have any children or necessarily interested in the church, right? Those are all potentially probing security questions. So they research and plan their attack. Preparation is when they get the tools that they need, right? They buy guns, buy chemicals for bombs, rent cars, whatnot. And then breach and attack, they're kind of side by side, right? They're breaching to attack whatever place. So where we hope to see them, right? Talk about observational techniques, what to look for. We're hoping to find these people when they're either A, they're voicing their grievance, they got issues, or the third one, when they're in preparation mode, research and planning mode. That's when you catch them probing security, which is why the stuff that we reported up to the police department, they were all potential people probing security, and they didn't have nothing else. There's no other explanation other than that they were probing security. Next slide. So how are we gonna find the people that are concerning? Well, we need informants, right? And this isn't 21 Jump Street or NCIS or anything else, right? We don't use the guy that was caught in a drug bust and we're going to give him a break and he's going to tell us when the next shipment of 5,000 tons of cocaine is coming in. This is much different. Our informants in the realm of protecting the church and threat assessment are people that are trustworthy and people that are in a position to see things and report things. So really, they're all of you, right? They're the pastors. They're the administrative staff at a church or a business. They are the custodians. They are the people who manicure the lawns. They are everybody. In our church, right, our informants are everybody. Greeters, ushers, parking posse, people at the coffee kiosk, people at the guest services. Everybody is an informant. So as part of that, we train everybody at our church as far as what to look for. And then anything that they see that's suspicious, they report it to the security ministry. Next. And some, we go into more detailed training for at our church, but we don't need to go into all that today. We teach about different types of behavioral profiles, but ultimately, all of those behavioral profiles, what they all have in common is they're all off baseline. So just remember baseline. Baseline is, what is everybody doing? And the person who's not doing what everybody else is doing is someone that you might want to take a look at, right? Somebody that's excessively sweating and nobody else is sweating, maybe take a look. Maybe that guy's up to no good. Somebody that's dressed totally out of place, maybe that's somebody you should take a look at. Maybe somebody that has a gigantic box or a big backpack. Nobody else has that. Maybe that's somebody you should look at. So you don't necessarily need to focus on any one profile, but just remember that when you're looking at people at your church or wherever, you're at the mall, anybody that's doing things that nobody else is doing is usually a concern. If you're at church, everyone's looking at the pastor giving the sermon, and there's somebody in the back, and all they want to look at is how many security cameras are around, where the exits are, and looking at security people. That person's up to no good, right? So look for what doesn't fit in. Next slide. You can play this.
I'm a firefighter.
A teacher.
I'm a farmer.
A manager.
I'm a barber.
A waitress.
A student.
A mom. We're all part of your community. We live in small towns and big cities.
On farmland and concrete.
Every day we move in and out of each other's busy lives.
It's easy to take for granted all the little details that make up our everyday.
The morning walk.
That familiar engine firing up.
The bus stop friends. A hot cup of coffee.
That guy who can never seem to parallel park.
Every day brings surprises.
Flat tire. Midday traffic.
Bus delays, again. There's always something unexpected.
And honestly, that's fine.
It's when you experience a moment of uncertainty.
Something you know shouldn't be there.
Or someone's behavior that doesn't seem quite right.
These are the moments to take a pause.
Because if something doesn't feel right, it's probably not.
It's not about paranoia.
Or being afraid.
It's about standing up and protecting our communities.
One detail at a time.
Because a lot of little details can become a pattern.
We
trust our instincts.
Just like you should.
Because only you know what's not supposed to be in your everyday.
We all play a role in keeping our communities safe.
So protect your everyday. If you see something suspicious, say something to local authorities.
So Mindy and I have talked several times about 9/11 and her experiences, but the biggest tool, you can go back on that last slide with just the video but not play it. The biggest tool that the FBI, Homeland Security, and a bunch of other federal agencies that kind of look into terrorism for us, the biggest tool that they have that they push is see something, say something. And that's exactly what we're talking about when I talk about informants and everyone being aware of what needs to be reported. That's the biggest tool you could ever have. It's better than any expensive security system or Navy SEALs you can pay to protect your church. Imagine a field, an invisible field around your church of people that everybody knows what to look for. Nothing's going to get in. So that's the biggest tool you have is by training people to what to be aware of and then to report it. Next slide. This goes along with reporting stuff, but you should also be aware of packages. If you're at church, just like you're at the airport, you have a responsibility. You see unattended bags or parcels, you should report that. If you don't yet have a security ministry, still report that to church staff or greeters or ushers. Let people know that you see something that's not been claimed and it's suspicious. If you hear other people's conversations and it's concerning, just report it. We'll talk about a little bit later about how we handle stuff at our church, right? We handle things at the lowest possible level. Sometimes the biggest fear is, I don't want to report somebody. This person might not have done anything wrong, and I don't want them to get tackled and all this stuff. It's not about that. Just report it, and we'll make contact and just make sure that there's nothing suspicious going on. Next slide. So we're moving on to kind of some concepts that we use at our church for our security ministry. And first and foremost, right, is we are not cops, okay? It's really important. Like, probably the least group percentage of people we have on our security team are actually law enforcement officers. And I know why, because a lot of law enforcement officers, they don't want to be involved in security because they think they're like rent-a-cops or mall security or whatnot. And that's totally not what this is about. This is like the most fulfilling thing that I've probably done in my life is being able to be a part of a church and being able to protect the congregation, right? Looking over the flock. So that's what our job is protecting. We're not worried about burglary or vandalism, shoplifting. We can call the police for that. All we are here for is to make sure that the church is safe. And what I always like to talk about is not just keeping the church safe, right? There's an even deeper reason why are we keeping the church safe? We are keeping the church safe so that everybody else that's here can worship God. That's what you're here for. You don't need to worry about looking over your back. We want to make sure you can worship. So that's what the real goal is. Next slide. Active shooters, you guys have all heard it. This is basically an ongoing event with a shooter at a location usually with a large amount of people, and they continue to shoot. Oftentimes it's ended prior to law enforcement arriving. And we don't need to go into too much into this. This would be, you have training and know how to enter buildings if you have an active shooter. So I'm not going to go too much into detail on that. Next slide. This is a video on active shooters from a perspective of just everybody, not necessarily your security ministry, but this is a video that we actually show at our church every quarter. You show it many, many, many times so all the staff know exactly how are we going to handle it when something bad happens. And this is a great video for you to watch. We can get you a copy of this if you need it.
It may feel like just another day at the office, But occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference: run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important: you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
So, like I mentioned, we show this to church staff quite often. I'll get you in one sec. You know, sometimes, like, you know, Minnie had mentioned, this is the time when we need to be vigilant. Sometimes people are like, well, this is so horrible that we have to think like this. You know, well, when was the last time there was a school fire? You see how many fire drills they go through, fire alarms they have, fire extinguisher, fire, everything, right? And unfortunately, these are the times it's not a big deal. You don't need to be over concerned. Just like we prepare for fires, we should be prepared for bad people, okay? So moving on to the next slide. Oh, sorry. Yes. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, I will put my email at the end, and I'll send it to you, whoever needs it. So next slide. Well, firearms, sensitive issue, okay? That's another administrative question. That's something that has to be talked about, obviously, early on when you're forming your team. I talked about you could do private security. They may be armed or unarmed. If you have local law enforcement on a reimbursable contract, you know, they're obviously going to be armed. Are you going to have people that are armed on campus? That's something that really just has to be considered, and the leadership has to decide what they want. Next slide. Laws. If you are carrying, if you have people in your security ministry that are armed, right? It is important to know the laws. They're really not too complex. It seems like they're really complex when you watch the news all the time. California, you're allowed to use reasonable force for reasonable situations, right? So we have a pastor detail. If somebody spits in the pastor's face, we don't shoot them, right? Somebody slaps the pastor in the face, you don't shoot them, right? So it's, you know, you have to be reasonable, right? And luckily, California, their CCW requirements are actually pretty strict. I think California is probably the strictest in all the country as far as having people who carry concealed weapons to go through a lot of training. But all the laws is not too much different than law enforcement's right. It's self-defense of yourself or another, and it has to be reasonable. And then we have just one other exemption that law enforcement can use. If you're not armed, right? If your whole team is not armed, or you have members that are not armed, that's no big deal, right? They are, like I said, they're also great informants for your team, people that can watch to look for suspicious people, but they can also help expedite the flow of traffic during emergencies. If there's an active shooter incident, the unarmed security people can help get people to a safe location or give direction to others. Next slide. Oh, sorry. And as far as like the people who are unarmed, like I have an elder's wife who just joined our security ministry, and she always has a baby because she's a foster mom, so she constantly has a newborn, and she doesn't plan on doing anything actively. She just wants to be that person. She's all over the campus, so she's like my super secret spy. You wouldn't even see her earpiece, and she's just always everywhere, and you would never know the difference. So unarmed security ministry people are definitely valuable. You need to figure out where your posts are going to be. Any of this stuff, if you ever have questions after or in the future, you can always call me. I need to identify places where that are important, strategically speaking, in case there's bad stuff that happens. So you need to have pre-designated spots where people should be, as well as people that rove around campus. And in those posts, obviously, they have responsibilities there. Locations, you just talk normal. We don't have any breaker, 10 code, 11 code, any fancy code. We just talk, hey, this is Byron. Can somebody please help me outside? That's all it is. Can somebody come over to the education building on the second floor? There's 2 kids that are fighting. Just talk normal, plain text English. Location should be just north, south, east, west, what floor you're at, whatnot. Because not everybody knows the church as well as everybody else. If you say E204, everybody might not know what you're talking about. You need to have radios. You should research what radios are best for you, but you have to be able to communicate to each other. And so we all carry radios. We go through training, like how to talk to each other as far as small things, like how you're going to wear your earpieces or how you slowly speak into the microphone and whatnot. So you need to figure out communications. Next slide. Security sashes. I highly recommend these. I don't work for any of these companies that you see, any of the products, but I like all of them. We have sashes at our church. They're undercover sashes. They're gaining more traction in the private sector. Basically, they're underneath your clothing, and during emergencies, you pull them out and you put them on. That lets everybody in the congregation know, oh, this person's telling me where to go, I should probably listen. And more importantly, this is telling the police department not to shoot me when they get here, right? So that's another great tool for you to have. You need to know who, and a side note to this, if you do use sashes, this is like an emergency sash. You shouldn't just wear them to help direct traffic. If someone pulls a fire alarm and they're a bad guy, and they just want to see how many security people come out, now you say, oh, they have 18. I just counted them all, right? So this is only for dire emergencies like active shooters that you would pull out these sashes. Next. I'm not going to cover this video, but I will talk about it briefly. As I said, we've had tremendous buy-in and support from our church. And so I don't work for this company either. It's called Guard 911. And you can Google it. It's an application that runs on your smartphone. And what it is a portable panic button. So what it is, you have it on your phone, you hit the button, it calls 911 for you, and it tells everybody else that has that app that's in your, on your campus. It tells everybody else that you just hit that button, and it tells everybody where you're at, and it tells the police where you're at. There's a geofence they place around your church, and then everybody knows what's going on. So in emergency, if you have a Sunday school teacher and they hit this button, for us, all the administrators and the security ministry and key ministry leads, they all have this app on their phone, and everybody knows that something's going on. Because you don't want to have it be like a fire alarm or anything, right? Because then what if it's a fire or not active shooter? This way, we're able to know if there's some active shooter incident going on at our church. This is a really, really good app. And so I mentioned the first one, like how do we deal with things, right? I talked about things to be aware of, people that are concerning. Okay, now that they're concerning, what do we do with them? Well, I like to always tell everyone, kill them with kindness, right? Even in my career in law enforcement, I've been assigned to different things. I've dealt with really bad people in really bad areas, and I'm always a gentleman to everybody. You get a lot more when you're nice to people. And I can tell you this, if somebody comes into your church and they have bad intentions and all you want to do is love on them, they're not going to stay. They don't want love, okay? They don't want attention. And so when you deal with people, if someone says, hey, this person's acting really weird, your security team should be able to walk up and just say, hey, my name's Byron. I haven't met you before. Is this your first time here? What's your name? Can I buy you a cup of coffee? You're actually just being a very warm member of the congregation, right? But we're also just making sure that everything's okay. You should document everything. I keep a running journal of all the incidents that happen at our church. So later on, if something happens, say somebody comes and they've been unruly for several times, and then they break a law, and the police department comes, and I can I can reference things that have happened in the past. Next slide. We do have a pastor detail. I know there are some other churches in Sacramento. Some have pastor details. Some even have a detail for the pastor's wife. So it's whatever your church wants. And we provide training on that for our security team as well. That's fine for that. Next slide. Scheduling, I've actually liaised with a bunch of different churches that have security ministries. Everyone works a little different as far as, they don't want to burn out their volunteers. So some people will have volunteers work the entire Sunday through all services. We do it, we're really flexible. So you just tell me what services you want to help out. If you want to help 1 or 3, just let me know. And then every week we send out new schedules to everybody on the team so they know where they're going to help out at. I mentioned training. We have lots and lots of training. And it's actually, I tell myself it's fun. Hopefully the guys here from my church think it's fun. But we have all sorts of training where we laugh and have a good time, but we also prepare for different situations. That's really, really important, right? It's not just that you have radios with communications, whatnot, and you have sashes on. You have to be prepared for how you're going to act. So we have training for that. And I didn't mention it, but just backtracking. So I mentioned radios. We do wear earpieces. Every church is different. Okay, so some churches want people to wear polos that say security. Some churches want pins. Some churches want, nothing. Our church, we're pretty low key, so we choose not to be totally overt. Like we don't wear polos or anything because we don't want to make the congregation actually feel, like not as comfortable at church. So we kind of like are in the background. Next slide. And this is really big. So, I talked about the negative stuff, that why we have to have protection, why we need security. And it's unfortunate that that's where we're at, right? But then I also talked about this is how we can keep the church safe. You can put these programs in place, and then everyone can remain hopefully safe. But there's also another part to it, which is probably, in my mind, maybe one of the most valuable things of our security ministry. We've been about 2 years now at our church with our security ministry, and we are nearing 39 people on our team. And it's awesome. I mean, we have guys here from my church, and I love all of them. It's like a life group for us. We congregate. Sometimes we congregate too much, but it's because we all are a part of each other's lives. We all support one another. There are many people that are encouraged to serve others, but they don't want to teach Sunday school, and they don't want to do the coffee kiosk, right? There's something for everyone, and I found that the security ministry also opened the doors for people that, I could do that. I want to protect people. I am very observant. So it's been a good opportunity for other people finding a place to volunteer that wasn't normally available. We go out, I want to say at least every other month. We go out to places in the wilderness. We go shooting. We go out to lunch. We train together and do other fun events together, and that's awesome. Like I said, it's a place where all of us we all have our own different jobs or places that we may socialize. And, it seems like, we're definitely in a battle with Christianity. And for me, it's nice that since I'm at work, really around very, very, very few believers, it's nice for me to have my flock of friends that I can really lean on that are also Christians. And I just want to, before I go to my last slide, I do want to mention a story that it's lighthearted. Well, it's really, really positive. And I told this to the leaders at our church when I recently gave another training about this stuff. And so, we talk about, it seems so serious, right? And it seems like we're on edge, we're paranoid, we're trying to keep the church safe. But it's an opportunity for not only fellowship, but to change people's lives potentially. So Robert's here, awesome guy, one of our many security people, and he loves to love on people. That's his investigation style. He wants to pray and love for everybody. Everybody knows that, okay? We call him a Bible thumper because that's his defense weapon when he gets in trouble. He's going to Bible thump the bad guy. Anyways, but we had a guy, he came in one Sunday, and it was a third service, and he came in midway through the third service. He sat in the back, looked really suspicious, looked really mean, he's not smiling, not singing, not involved, not taking notes. Just odd. He didn't stay very long. He left. Robert tried to talk to him that day. I think Alan might have also, another one of our guys, and he just really wasn't wanting to get involved in conversation. Odd, right? We just note that. Okay, that guy was kind of suspicious. Suspicious enough, we recognize him the following Sunday when he shows up. He shows up again for the third service, except he sits in the back aisle. He has a hooded sweatshirt on. He pulls it over his head. He's leaning forward. He has a program, but he's not paying attention to it. He's not really paying attention to service. He's not singing. He puts his hands in his pockets, and he's just rocking forward, not paying attention to anything. And then I'm watching him. He pulls his hooded sweatshirt now up over his face. So now this is all you see, right? He's got a hoodie over, and all you can see is eyeballs. Puts his hands into his big baggy sweatshirt, and he's rocking up back and forth. And we have quite a few of us that are uneasy, like it's something to go down, right? We don't have metal detectors. We don't know what he has in his pockets. But everything he's doing is totally suspicious. He doesn't do anything, and he leaves, walks out into our atrium, and Robert makes contact. How are you doing? What's going on, brother? How can I help you? And you know what that situation was? That was a young man who lost his father in December, and it was January, and his father was a believer and went to our church. He was having very difficult times. And he wanted to see, what was my dad, why did my dad come here? What did he believe in, right? And you know how that contact ended? That contact ended in Robert not only embracing him, but praying with him. And he cried. That was the most awesome possible outcome we could have ever asked for, right? Because we are here to keep the church safe. But more importantly, right, if we can spread the word of God, awesome. So it may seem, like kind of the down topic. We're trying to keep the church safe, always being vigilant. But you can always have positive things come out of it as long as everybody has a real open heart and everybody always keeps an open mind. Next slide. So ultimately, right, we're all in this together. We're all stakeholders. We're all together, everybody. And we all look out for each other, and it's totally doable. We can keep everybody safe. The next slide, if you want to write down my information. Thank you very much. Good luck with everything.
Good job. He has brought so much information. Could you put the last information up for Byron? And there is going to be a panel, so we already gave you the information for texting us questions. Again, 916-915-8103, and Byron will be part of that panel so you can ask questions, okay? And we're going to stay after so you can ask him directly. So now it's my privilege to introduce you to Matt Carroll, the Sacramento Security Training Center. He is the co-founder of this center, a state-licensed security and firearms training center, and the Paladine Private Security, Sacramento's largest provider of armed patrol and response services. Matt also co-owns Armored Car Service and works as an independent security consultant for numerous police departments in California. Would you also welcome Matt now?
Good morning. Well, once again, what a phenomenal presentation by Byron. It's going to be a tough act to follow. So bear with me, a little bit of under the weather with the throat cracks. I am beyond puberty. I'm in my mid-40s, but I'm having a little bit of a throat issue today. So as Mindy, who sang at my Sheriff's Academy graduation in '98, thank you, related, I'm involved in a number of enterprises. You may or may not be familiar with Paladin Private Security. We put about 60 cars on the street of the Sacramento region, serving business districts, park districts, school districts, HOAs, Sacramento Regional Transit, et cetera. So we have our hands in a lot of industries, if you will, in terms of patrol service and response. We also do about a dozen faith-based organizations, including Montessori schools. Whenever they have the occasional threat, made against their organization, we're locally the company they lean on to provide armed services to protect the campus. I'm a co-founder of Emissary, which is an armored car service, predominantly moving currency for the emerging cannabis industry. Truth be told, someone's got to keep it safe. There's a lot of valuables running around our roadways in California under this new industry. And then for about 15 years, Paladin always ran a large internal training program to help its employees gain skills and promotions. And several years ago, we decided, well, we should, since we've been running an internal school for so many years, we should open up the doors to the public with that school. So nearly 3 years ago, we opened the Sacramento Security Training Center, which is co-located with Paladin. It's about a 8,000 square foot facility. We do everything from first aid and CPR and AED, emergency first responder training, baton pepper spray, tasers, and firearms training for both the uniformed industries as well as concealed carriers. We have our own on-site shooting facility. We're a green company, so we shoot frangible lead-free ammunition. If you may have read in the paper, the city of Sacramento got a little bit of heat about lead poisoning recently in their range. So we're steering wide and clear of that with a lead-free range facility that we operate. One of the points that came up several times in Byron's presentation that I wanted to touch on is, the stages that people go through, beginning with grievances. And he also touched on having that consensual contact, that initial encounter with people that may be coming into your ministries. And one of the courses that I always like to highlight that I think is absolutely invaluable, whether you're raising children, have coworker relations, if you're married or if you're working in any type of security role, is tactical communication. You may or may not have heard of the art of verbal judo, but it's very popular. There's a lot of books out there that you could grab off of the internet. Doc Thompson passed away some years ago, but his teachings remain alive and well throughout the law enforcement and security industries. So that's one of the courses that I would really encourage folks that are considering creating a security detail in their church to look into. The course can be taught in a number of forums. There's 8-hour versions, 16-hour versions. It should be a 40-hour version. But that is one of the courses that we do offer through the academy that we can deliver on site at your facility or that we could do through our classrooms. And in essence, verbal judo is a communication style that, to put it in layman's terms, helps you kill with kindness, helps you deflate a situation, de-escalate a situation, and avoid having to resort to force options. But also providing you that justification for force options should that become necessary. Obviously, one of the things that has to be in the back of some of the minds in the room, particularly for the business folks in the room, what we're talking about today with security comes with a large amount of liability. We're arguably in the most litigious state in the union, right? Where it doesn't cost anyone anything to sue anybody. You don't have to be right, right? But people can make you spend an awful lot of money defending yourself in California. So that being the case, if we can avoid having conflict, that's obviously the best path to take. And verbal judo will arm your internal security team with the tools to do that, while also building you an outline that you can present in court showing all of the ways that you tried to avoid that use of force scenario. One of the other points that Byron brought up was that critical decision on whether to manage security through an internal mechanism or to use contract services, whether from the private industry or law enforcement. It might surprise you as the owner of a security company. I don't recommend that you use contract guards. So in our opinion, they tend to be varying degrees of bad, and that you're going to be in much better hands to develop your own internal program complemented by intelligent training and good leadership for your scenario. That would start with, of course, sending that leadership group off to a formal training and then having in-service continuous training at your facility. Depending on whether you go an armed or unarmed route, you may also elect to incorporate video-driven judgment scenario training, which is one of the things that we offer on site and that we deliver through a mobile unit, as well as simunitions training, evacuation training. Planning is another, obviously, another big area and something that we've been doing for many years. Crime prevention through environmental design might be a phrase that you've heard throughout your security dialogues, and as Byron said, the Sacramento Police Department, SMUD, and some other agencies offer that course on about a quarterly basis, and it's generally free. It's typically a 40-hour course that will teach you how to, quote-unquote, design out crime. So it talks about a lot about property maintenance, whether you're talking about trees, shrubs, lighting levels. If you're in a position where you're going to be building a new facility, it's a great time to get educated on CPTED because you can actually learn how to design a facility to be crime resistant from day one. Oftentimes we're going into a facility trying to make it more crime resistant, but design flaws that were put into place 20 years ago make it a little more challenging. So that's certainly a course, as Byron mentioned, that's worth looking into. It's also another course that we can come out and teach on site and that we offer through our school. What else? Sorry. One of the things to consider with respect to your internal security department is we're coming out of a recession, as you may know, about 10 years ago when the state was looking at various ways to help its budget. One of the things that someone came up with is, well, why don't we regulate internal security operations? So 10, 15 years ago, if you went to a mall, some movie theaters, you would see, the Century Theater's security person wearing a Century Theater's security uniform, or the Arden Mall security wearing an Arden Mall security uniform, or Raleigh Field, UC Davis, Sac State. A lot of people had internal security departments, and someone at the state was wise enough to say, they're not paying licensing fees, right? So they passed some ordinances, there's some laws, and as of about 10 years ago, the state now has its hands in regulation of internal security. So there's a trigger that you want to be aware of as you're considering what to do in your organization. And the litmus test is this. If you're wearing a distinctive security uniform and you have contact with the general public, you now fall under regulation. So it's a critical distinction from the get-go to decide if you're going to have sashes, if you're going to have embroidered shirts, if you're going to have anything that someone could argue is a distinctive security uniform. And obviously, in the realm of ministries, you are having contact with the general public. It's supposed to be a welcoming environment. So the regulation is not too incredible. It's like $75 every 2 years for a license to run your own internal security through the state. But your employees will, from a regulatory standpoint, be required to have 16 hours of training provided by a licensed training center. You can do some of it in-house, but ultimately you're going to have to comply with some record-keeping requirements. There's going to be some background fees, some live scanning to make sure that these licensed security folks, are screened by FBI and DOJ accordingly. So it's just something to be aware of. Obviously, those are all services that our school or the other handful of schools in the region can help walk you through if that's a path that you decide to take. It's also going to come with an insurance policy cost, which obviously you should already have an insurance policy at your organization, but it may or may not cover security employees. So something to look at. Again, we're in California, so we got to protect our six. So with that, if you're going to have an internal security department that's actually state licensed and official, you'll want to make sure that you have proper coverage, right, for that. I think that's pretty much what I came here to say. So make sure that everyone is aware of the resources that are available to you in that regard for on-site training or training at our place. Yes, so we do group training. For instance, Vail Resorts uses us every ski season. We go up there and get all of their ski patrol folks done up on emergency first responder, tactical communications, some other things. So we do make up group packages that are more budget friendly. It typically is going to, save folks about half the cost as opposed to sending a bunch of people individually to our facility. Correct, right. So our typical guard classes that we run every 2 weeks, there's typically about 18 people in each of those classes. Our typical firearms class that we do every week typically has about a dozen people in it. So when we set up private classes, the instructors that do it basically want to make sure that they're getting that much or more, right, to make it worthwhile, because we're essentially going to have to cancel the classes for the general public. Yes? It's the same class is what you're talking about. So if you're a state licensed firearms training center, such as SSTC, and we have a student coming down from Placer County, let's say, or El Dorado County, who's hoping to get a concealed weapons permit through that county, we need to talk to Placer County Sheriff or El Dorado Sheriff and essentially get approval from those agencies. And they'll have the opportunity to come down, go through our class if they want to, look at all of our training materials, vet our instructors, vet our program, vet our insurance, all the other applicable things, look at our range. And if they're comfortable, then we can then our classes and our certifications that we issue will be valid in those cities and counties. So the course that we offer now has been blessed by the 7 surrounding counties around Sacramento. They're engaged in the CCW processes, so it's not been an issue to date. There's some Bay Area companies or cities that only allow 2 or 3 former cops from their departments to certify people, but as far as our area, we're in good shape, and our training is valid for all of the local sheriffs. Yes, sir. So SMUD was one of the regional leaders. Gil Razzo with SMUD kind of brought it to Sacramento about 10 years ago. There's a gentleman named Art Hushin from the National Institute of Crime Prevention. And he travels the country collaborating with public utilities, police agencies, et cetera, to fill classrooms and deliver this training. So sometimes you'll see it offered through SMUD. I'm not sure if PG&E's ever gotten into it, but SMUD specifically has been a host, if you will. And then Sergeant William Wan with the Sacramento Police Department coordinates with the National Institute of Crime Prevention to offer the courses locally about quarterly. There's another one coming up in about 2 weeks. Yes, sir. So now we have to interpret the laws, right? So again, the law says if you are wearing a distinctive security uniform. So I think it all comes down to the circumstances. I think in the scenario that Byron mentioned where, you know, oh my goodness, something insane is occurring, there's exigent circumstances, I think, you know, the state would be hard-pressed to send in a bean counter to try to cite you for intervening there. But, you know, if someone in their travels drives by a church and looks over and sees people in distinctive security uniforms and decides to go in and start asking some questions, you know, that's typically how people can find themselves in hot water. That said, there's only about 2 of those people in the state that do that, so.
Hey, Matt, we're going to ask if you will hold the rest of your questions till the panel, okay?
Perfect.
Get your throat better.
It's surviving.
All right.
Thank you.
God bless you. So each one of our speakers has another way of introducing something that maybe you've never even thought about. So I'm hoping that you're taking home a lot of golden nuggets from each one of our speakers. So the next speaker that we have, another awesome officer who is a sergeant for the Citrus Heights Police Department. Again, kudos for Citrus Heights catching the bad guy. Yay! So Sergeant James Evans, dear friend of mine, is a husband and father of 4, 24 years sworn police officer. He's a patrol sergeant, SWAT team leader, peer support supervisor, crisis intervention team, lead defensive tactics instructor, lead tactical communicator, and, oh my goodness, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Did I say that right? Jiu-jitsu? I don't think I said it right. Black belt, and then a karate black belt. Oh, well, come, sir. You may come up here, please. I won't make him mad. You are awesome.
Steal that from me. I'm usually much more comfortable with more intimate situations and not 500 people in an audience and a microphone. I'm usually using my big boy voice. But I want to talk a little bit about me first. Hopefully I don't fall off the stage. These bright lights. And pardon me if I start to get down and roam around you. I just feel like I need to connect with people sometimes, so I roam around. It's not about me, okay? I believe I was put here for a reason. I was given gifts and attributes to be able to do a job and handle a role. And that's why I believe I'm here. Are there any police officers, ex-police officers in the audience? Okay, yes. Okay, awesome. How about veterans? Veterans. Guys, thank you for your service. Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know if a lot of people understand the toll it takes on you, okay? When my slide comes up, if you can put that up there, thank you. You're gonna see victim up there. I've had a lot of dealings with victims through the years, in 24 years. Tragic losses, injuries, life just taken away from them. And every single time, it takes a little bit from you. Okay, in 24 years, there's been a lot of that taken away. And what's kept me healthy is not only my relationship with God, but my family, healthy things outside of work, that kind of thing. And there's a few principal beliefs that I have that have kind of kept me going through all this, and a lot of you will understand. In the training aspect, I've been very fortunate to have had a lot of excellent training and being able to deal with a lot of different incidents and critical incidents. But I believe that no matter what, every single person that I come in contact with deserves respect. Everybody, okay? That's one of my beliefs. I train other police officers so that they will live. Okay, that's another one of my beliefs. And I believe strongly that I need to leave people better than how I found them. And those are just some of the simple things that I believe that I do on a daily basis for the last 24 years that have kept me going and kept me sane in this crazy profession, okay? So another thing I want to talk about. With all this training I've had and dealing with thousands of victims, I've also dealt with thousands of suspects, perpetrators, creeps, weirdos, dangerous individuals, OGs and gangs, you name it. I have been trained how to deal with those individuals. I have pointed my various guns at individuals thousands of times. But with the grace of God, with all my training, I've never had to shoot anyone, okay? And there are thousands and thousands and thousands of officers like me who believe the same thing that I do, that are doing what they are supposed to be doing, okay? And they've never had to take a life. I just needed to get that out there, okay? Just need to get that out there. Okay, so what we're looking at up here is called the crime triangle, and some of you may be familiar with it, but it's kind of a scenario where all the right things happen and then somebody gets victimized. I'm sorry, I gotta come down to this light's way too bright. I like to work in the shadows. Some of you saw me strolling around the back. That's where I like to work. So we can spend a lot of time talking about offenders. Where do they come from? You know, how did they get that way? And we could spend weeks and years talking about it. The simple fact is they exist. And they're here. They're here amongst us. They're here when you drive your car. They're here when you go to the supermarket, when you eat in your favorite restaurant, when you go get coffee at Starbucks. They are among us. And there's various reasons for it. Quick question, how many of you know somebody, you don't have to raise your hand, who has a drug problem, who's an addict of any kind? Okay. Most of our property crimes that occur in our city, and I'm sure everywhere else, are because of people that have drug addiction. They got to get their drugs somehow. They got to steal to make the money to get the drugs. It's simple math. So the offenders are there. So here's what we need to key on is the triangles when the offender, and you have, and I almost don't like to say victim. I would rather say target, because you're not necessarily a victim yet, okay? But a target and a location and an opportunity to do so, okay? So the opportunity to do so, there's some things up here that you don't see. And that, with this summit going on and the talk about security and developing your own security teams and talking about if you see something, say something, you're developing and building guardians. Guardians protect the victim. I'm a guardian. Pastors, you're guardians, okay? Other people that we're training, we're developing you to be guardians. When guardians are around, wolves don't like to be around. They'd rather the guardians be gone. Okay? And that's another topic. When we talk about offenders, they're wolves. Wolves are always searching for easy targets. Now, you saw up there a lot of mass murder situations. I almost don't like to call it active shooter, because, well, I have a gun. I'm very good at shooting, but a shooter is like a negative connotation. These are mass murders, okay? You see a lot of them. When you have a mass murderer, what is their number one fear. And this, I'm quoting, this is from Colonel Grossman, if you follow him or you like to listen to him. What is his number one fear? Anyone? Failure, right? So hence, they're looking for easy targets, okay? Somewhere where there's not a bunch of guardians, where people are going to ignore that person, okay? Where no one's going to stand up and face him, right? They're looking for easy targets, right? So with this summit and this realization, and here's the other thing too. You realize that you have broken a huge hurdle just by being here today, is the realization that there is violence taking place in our churches. And you have realized that, and you are here. That is the first step, is realization and understanding that we need to do something about it. So congratulations to all of you for being here. There are other places that they haven't gotten to this step yet, okay? So, opportunity, no guardians, no internal security. When we talk about these suspects looking for easy targets, right? Then you have, and I don't want to call it victim, I want to call it the target. We talk about sheep. I talked about a wolf. Guardians can be referred to as sheepdogs. And then we have our sheep. Our sheep are basically, most of us kind of go through our daily lives. We get up in the morning, we do our daily activities, our chores, or have our breakfast, have our coffee, take the kids to school, drive to work, go to work, get off at 5, drive in traffic home. We just kind of go through this daily routine. A lot of times we're unaware. Okay? And it's at these times when we're unaware. For example, let me see. Who can I pick on? I need a woman, one female that I could ask a question to. Who's willing to? Ma'am, perfect. So this is the question I have for you. You get off work late one night, okay? You're very late. Husband's calling you, kids are calling you. When are you gonna be home? When are you gonna be home? And you're kind of stressed out, but you're leaving work late, and you realize everybody in the office has already gone. You walk up to the parking lot, and your car is, because when you came in, you had to park way out in the back parking lot, okay? But by your car is another vehicle that you haven't seen before, and there seems to be someone inside of it that you don't really recognize. But you're stressed out, you need to get home, you're already working late. What do you do? She's not going to go to her car. Why not?
I was a bartender in Old Sac. I was the last one out of the Southwest one. I will ask someone to come escort me. Or I've spent the night in Old Sac before.
She said she would have somebody escort her because she was a bartender in Old Sac, and she says that, well, I've spent the night in the bar before. So no, that's very good. And this is one of the things that I've found with countless victims, and I know Chaplain Mindy mentioned it a little bit, is that victims a lot of times say, I never thought that would happen to me, right? But victims have a little bit of responsibility in being victimized. And when you talk to the victim, they'll tell you, oh, he just came out of nowhere, I don't know what happened. But upon deeper interviews and questioning, you've realized, wait a minute, well, I did see this guy, and he looked a little off to me. Clue number one. And his body language seemed like he was nervous about something, all right? But what's the problem? If we see these danger signs, what's the problem? Why do we still then just continue to go on with what we're doing, even though we see the danger signs? Why? Anyone? Why? Busyness? Denial? That's a good one. Preoccupied? What about, how about this one? What about social stigma? Do you think? I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be rude to that person. I don't like what they're doing, but I don't want to say anything because I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be that girl. I don't want to be that guy. Okay? Social stigma. Even when our life is in danger, ooh, no, I don't want to say anything, okay? So going through this cycle of life, not being aware. Did you mention condition yellow at all? You didn't mention condition yellow? So in this condition, this going through life as a sheep, condition white. That means you're just basically unaware. You're going through the motions, you're doing the things you need to do, but there'll be a guy walking down the street with a shotgun and you wouldn't even see it. You wouldn't even see it, okay? Here's a perfect example. How often do you see this? Oh, wait, I got it. Okay? People getting out of their car, walking through the parking lot. Oh, sorry. Right? That's absolutely unaware of your environment. Not only is it dangerous, you're probably going to get hit one of these days going through the parking lot with your phone, walking down the street with your phone on, right? And here's the other thing. These things are like attached to us. It's like you try to put it down, but you can't. It's like Velcro, right? How many of you, come on, be honest, okay? I got to go to the bathroom. You take your phone to the bathroom with you. Okay, I know, right? I can look at it while I'm sitting on the pod, right? Kill two birds with one stone, right? And I'm just, the advent of these creates even more unawareness, even more preoccupation, okay? Even more that condition white where you're not aware, okay? So let me now go to condition yellow, okay? Put this down, see? Put it down. You won't die, I swear. You'll be okay. If you don't have it in your hand, you will be okay. Condition yellow is just being aware of my surroundings. A classic example of condition yellow, okay? And this is, we're talking about potential targets, victims, how to not be a victim. Condition yellow is like a dog. A dog at any moment, and this is not derogatory, a dog at any moment is ready to play, eat, go to the bathroom, okay? What else? All these things, at any split moment, it can go from one to the other because it's in condition yellow. It's aware of the environment. You see the dogs, they'll be like, do, right? They're very aware of their environment, okay? Now, as a police officer for so long, I've been trained to be condition yellow. Veterans and law enforcement in here, you'll understand. Even when you're off duty, when you walk into a store, do you look for the clerk? I do. When you come into the parking lot, do you look for suspicious vehicles? I do. When you sit down at a restaurant, where do you sit? In the back, with my wall to my back, and I can see the front doorway. Always. And I don't even think about it. When I'm with my kids or my family, and we're walking down the sidewalk, and I see some creepy-looking fellow coming this way, what do? You put your body in front of it to protect them. It's just, and I don't even think about it. Okay? But that's condition yellow, and it's not meant to stress you. Okay? When you start to stress about it all the time incessantly and get your mind all worked up about it, then it leads to issues and problems and different things like that. But condition yellow is just be aware of your surroundings. You walk into the 7-Eleven, where's the clerk? I don't see him, okay? I want to know where he's at. Is he tied up in the back or what, I don't know. So, okay. So that's victims. Now, a couple other things. What the crime triangle doesn't really talk about much. They put the victim there, they put the opportunity, location, the offender, they put that there. But you don't have to be a victim. And that's the point I'm trying to get to you with these conditions and learning. You don't have to be the victim, okay? You can turn into the guardian right away, okay? If something happens, you can be a guardian. You don't have to be the victim, okay? All you need is desire, courage, heart, and maybe your own God-given ability, okay? And mannerisms and personality, okay? Now, Run, hide, fight. We have to understand that not everybody can run. Not everybody's going to be able to hide. Not everybody's going to be able to fight. It's just that way, and it's not going to be 100%. When it comes down to it, and life is on the line, stress is at its highest, some will fight, some won't. And that's just human nature, and that's okay. Luckily, there are those that will fight, okay? There are those that will fight, all right? So I don't want people to think that, well, I don't know if I could do that or not. You might not be able to, but that's okay, okay? That's okay. Mass murders, shootings, it's not just those that we need to worry about. What happens far more often, okay, are individual killings on church property, on church grounds. Domestic violence is the number one. Domestic violence is the number one. Husbands, wives shooting each other on church property. Okay, those are the other things we need to look out for. Right? This thing called condition yellow, being aware of your surroundings. There's a lot of times we as human beings forget about something very primal to us, and that's our instincts. And I'm going to give you a funny example. Okay? And for those of you that Eddie Murphy did something like this years and years and years ago, but I use it to this day. Instincts, natural, okay? Any hunters in here, okay? What do deers do when they're alerted to your presence, either by sound or smell? Huh? What's that? And then usually what happens? They're gone. They sense the danger, they're gone. Live another day. Humans, us, we tend to ignore our instincts, okay? For example, you go into a haunted house. Oh, honey, look at this beautiful house. Get out. That's weird. Hey, look, honey, there's blood in the toilet and all these flies on the mirror. What's going on? These are clues. These are instincts. Your instincts are telling you to get out, but you ignore them because of sometimes the social stigma. You're afraid of what other people might say about you. Oh, you sissy, you fraidy cat, whatever it is. No, that's your instincts telling you, man, get out. Something's wrong here. Get out, okay? So listen to your instincts. They're there for a reason. They're put there for a reason, okay? Listen to them. If someone is giving you the creeps, stop and go, whoa, 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 you're giving me the creeps, okay? Why? Why is this happening, right? Okay. You talked about it. If you see something, say something. Guys, it takes courage to say something. It takes courage. You have to have courage. You see something, to say something, you have to have courage. Most people will just go, oh, somebody else will say something. Somebody else will call the police. Somebody else will handle it. No, you handle it. Have the courage to say something. You may not be able to do something, that's fine, but say something. Let the guardian help out and deal with that. We talked about, what was the creep with the fanny pack? Okay? To have the courage to speak up and say something, you don't have to be a jerk, you don't have to be rude, you don't have to be disrespectful. Kid with the backpack. Hey, brother, how are you? How are you doing? Hey, I'm sorry. How old are you? 24? And you have a fanny pack that's kind of bulging. It's kind of making me nervous, like you might have something in there. Do you have something in there? Okay? It's just doing that can help prevent something down the line from happening. And speaking of that, we see the news, we see the headlines of all the killings going on. Do you see the headlines of all the killings that were stopped before they became killings? Do you see those? Why not? That's all well, that's a whole nother question that's going to go real big, okay? We're not going to go down that road. You don't see them. You don't see them. I personally have been involved in 2 of them, okay? We did a security assessment on a high school kid who students were saying he was drawing macabre pictures and talking about shooting up the school. Investigation found he had a little shack. He had stolen various family members' guns. He had plans, rope, duct tape, chains, all kinds of stuff. Okay? But we caught him before he did anything. Okay? Another one, just not too recently, with the advent of Facebook and social media. Okay? Person on social media saying that he's about to go to a public place with his rifle and cause havoc. Okay? Investigation, within a half hour, we figured out who he was and where he lived. So we went to pay him a visit. He hid the loaded assault rifle when we got there, and he had a backpack all fully loaded, ready to go out. But you didn't hear about that one. Okay? This happens all the time. Because why? Condition yellow, we're paying attention. Pay attention. Say something. Have the courage to say something. If you can, do something. And that will help save lives. Okay? In your church, in your group, you see people having problems, issues, and there's always those that have problems, issues. We all have them. I have them. But when it gets to those steps where there starts to become this ideology, you know, and this intense blaming and you know, life will be better if this happens. I mean, anything like that. These are signs that person needs some help. We need to get somebody in touch with that person and work something out, okay, at least to keep an eye on them, okay, so that something bad doesn't happen. Okay. Over on the right, you see another triangle, and there's a lot of triangles, okay, there's a lot of triangles. But crime must have three elements to be completed: the ability, desire, opportunity. A 3-year-old that says, I'm gonna kick your ass, okay, well, okay, you have the desire, you have the opportunity right now, but you really don't have the ability, okay? Let me give you a prime example of this. 8-year-old boy, drunk, beating up his mother, throwing furniture around the house. Who gets called? We get called, we get out there, okay, we're gonna have to go to juvenile hall. 8 years old is a little young, but we have to make an exception in this case. He's being very violent, mom's not safe. So we take him, he's drunk, and he has a mouth on him like you wouldn't believe. What would some people call it, like a drunk sailor? He had a mouth. I was shocked that this 8-year-old had much better vocabulary than me. All during the trip, so we have to stop at the hospital, okay, before we can take him to juvenile hall because he's got to get checked out because he's under the influence. He's threatening to break his cuffs and beat me up. Okay, he didn't say it that way. He said it much more colorfully. The whole way, calling me names like you wouldn't believe. Every letter of the alphabet he had some curse word for. And the whole entire time. So we get to the hospital, I open the door, get out, open his door, and guess what this little sneaker did? He slipped his handcuffs. And he got out of that car, looked at me with this mean face, and he says, aha, what now? Explicative. And he started swinging on me. Son, stop. Just stop, please. This is silly. So, desire, opportunity, yes. Ability, no. Okay, no ability to do that. So, anyway, that was I've never encountered an 8-year-old like that ever again. It was amazing. So, again, what we're doing here with fortifying and developing personnel and security, this is fortifying our location, okay, making us a not so easy target. We've got people watching, okay, these individuals that want to come harm, based upon their behaviors, their body language, something they're up to. If we can catch them and see them and say something, do something, it's going to save lives, okay? You cannot complete the triangle, all right? Break the triangle, okay? Break that triangle. Even if they have an opportunity and you do get attacked, and all the pieces are correct, you still have the ability to break the triangle and not be a victim, okay, by doing something, okay, with desire, heart, and God on your side, doing something, okay? You'll be amazed. Example, the high school student with a knife that went stabbing everyone. It doesn't have to be a gun, okay? Knives don't run out of bullets, okay? Guns do. Stabbing students, and one brave teacher who chose not to be the victim, he chose to be the guardian that day, confronts him, okay, and holds him down till help arrives, okay, preventing more death and more injury and more carnage. Okay, he chose not to be the victim that day, all right, and he saved countless lives. And that's us. When you look around, I see this a lot. I can show you countless videos of people filming beatings, okay, rapes, people being seriously hurt, and they're standing there filming, going, somebody call the police. Somebody needs to help these people. Somebody needs to help. Okay? We're like a society of people that just watch. And we always will, well, somebody else will do it. Somebody else will help. Somebody else will come. No. You're there. Say something, do something. Okay? All right. That's pretty much it. Dealing with the offenders, knowing what to look for, condition yellow, okay? Understanding that they have opportunities, understanding that we need to build up our guardians so that they have less opportunities, being able to see things before they happen, and then making it so that you're not a victim. Okay? These are all things that will help prevent any future catastrophes and massacres. Okay? I only have 30 seconds left. Any questions for me? And I'll be up here on the panel. Okay? No? Thank you.
No, one, Chuck. Okay, right before we do the panel, we've got one more speaker. Let me read about this great guy. And I told Chuck that, Charlie, that if he talked too long, I was going to actually push him off the stage. So you want to watch that? He said he's going to do it just to see that. Okay. I'm just joking. Okay. So Charlie, 18 years, has shaped Church West into a nationally recognized leader in the community that serves faith-based organizations. His approach is simple: understand ministries, analyze the risk, provide all the resources that we can possibly can so the claims are not staggering. He serves on 2 national board insurance advisory boards and serves the needs of 9 denominational offices. And if you've ever been in a situation where you had insurance and then you needed it and realized you didn't have the right insurance, that's just amazingly sad. So Charlie, take care of us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I am going to have you come up here and take me down. But I'm going to go down here. Good call on this. Yeah, right down here. Absolutely. I was not born to be a preacher. Because that's good. That's me. Can we go to the next slide? If we could. This is our agency. We insure about 3,000 churches in California, Arizona, Nevada. That's all we do. We've got a great team of folks there. One of the focuses of what it is that we do is we try to get churches together in events like this. And so I want to thank Salem, the chaplains, everybody that's gotten together about getting churches together knee to knee and talking with one another. And I want to encourage everybody to connect with other churches. And then when you leave today, talk to these churches and say, hey, I'm going to come audit your church security program. I'm going to come visit your church, and I'd like you to come visit my church. So you're going to ditch church one morning, and they're going to ditch church one morning. They're going to go to your church. You're going to go to their church. And you talk about that, is it code yellow? Yeah, looking at it. Condition yellow. And because we uncondition ourselves if we go to the same church every Sunday morning, and we're there in a mode of worship and a temperament of worship, and to get somebody else to come in and look at what our church is doing, and we can look at what they're doing, we're going to learn from each other, and we're going to audit each other a little bit. So I really want to encourage you to do that. It's part of what we focus on. Then also, in your packet, you received a sample security program. When you're done with that, when you've tailored it to your church and your particular ministry, if you want to send it to us, our attorneys review it at no charge, and they'll double check it and make sure that you're not missing something, and maybe point some things out, because sometimes as we edit things, we edit the wrong things. And let's get somebody to rubber stamp it for you. Okay, next slide. Okay, I was asked to talk about the concept of negligence, which is, we want to talk about, there's three components of it, really. The three components of negligence are duty, breach, and damage. And if you read the dictionary definition, it says lack of proper care and attention. The legal definition is the breach. I hate when people just read a PowerPoint, because I could just put it up there and everybody could read it and we could go home. But I'm going to read this part because we don't want to miss this. It's the breach of a legal duty of care which results in damage to the claimant undesired by the defendant. Okay? So liability, negligence, occurs when you have three conditions met. One, there's a duty. Your church has a duty. Your church has a duty to care for the people that come visit your church. If there is a breach of that duty, what's a breach? The bad guy comes, the predator comes, and you weren't prepared for it. Then the last component of that is damage. And the damage is if there was damage that was unwanted by the recipient of that damage and unintended by the organization, but as a result of your negligence, you are held liable for that. Matt talked a little bit about having the right insurance policy in place, and that's one of those things. Sometimes we'll look at our insurance policy and we're saying, well, I don't see security in there or see security operations listed in there, but I'm sure it's covered. And some insurance people will say, oh, well, it doesn't say it's excluded, so it's covered. You want to see something in there that says security operations liability, security team liability, something along those lines. Okay? That's the main thing. Did we lose that? We did? I don't. I kind of do. Maybe. I don't want to jump. How are we doing up there, guys? Okay, we can stand by. No, it's fine. So that's the main thing, is legal. You have a duty, breach, and damage. Those are the three things that you really want to look at. And if you have that duty, breach, and damage, that's when you're going to be found negligent. Come on, really? I'm kidding. Huh? I'd like that. That'd be great. Why did I just forget? Guys, I know. It's on my slide. I was going to follow that because I put it just together for you, or together just for you guys. Duty, breach, and damage. I have some examples of just recent claims that we've had and some situations that we've had. Give me just 1 second. I can come down here. The lights are in my eyes. Thanks, guys. 1 second. Okay. The next step to understanding your liability is how your church is regulated. Does anybody have somebody that comes to the church on Sunday morning and says, do you have a security team? Does Matt show up there and say, show me your security team? We've got a separation of church and state, right? But your church is regulated, and your church must meet that standard of care by having a security team in place. And the way you're regulated is in court. It's after the incident happened, and then they look back and they say, hey, did you ever go to an event and hear about church security? And then did you follow up by going and have some security training? I've never met Matt before, but I'm going to be as commercial because it is something that you need to do, is you need to get your team out there and go do that security training and get the local law enforcement to your church to do an assessment of your facility. Because in court, they're going to ask you, what did you do? And if you sat there and said, nothing, then the liability just increases more and more. Okay, you've got liability is the greatest. You have two different situations. One, if the event is foreseeable, and second is if you didn't meet the basic standard of care. So I'm going to give you some foreseeable events. Two of them happened last week on the same day with churches that we insure. One of them, I'll read it to you, it was in LA on April 18th. A couple had a history of a violent relationship, and it was known by leadership. They'd been through counseling. Following a Wednesday night service, the man stabbed his fiancée in the church parking lot and left her to die, and he took off. The church was aware of this. The church was aware of this situation. Go to the next slide. Keep going, guys. It says foreseeable events. One more. Okay. Yeah. Couple had they had a tumultuous relationship. We see it a lot through domestic violence situations. The pastors need to be part of the security team and have an open communication with the security team, because if they are aware of a problem either in a custodial relationship or problems in a family relationship that we know there's domestic violence in place, it frequently spills over to the church. In this situation last Wednesday, the problem was that she'd broken up with him, but he knew where to find her every Wednesday night because she was going to be going to the church service every Wednesday night. Jim talked about being a victim and that opportunity. Or a target and that opportunity. If they know when to reach that target and that opportunity is going to be on Wednesday nights, they're very easy prey for somebody to be a victim. Okay. Also, same day in Fullerton, we had a church that had opened up their facility to the homeless group to sleep overnight, and some folks were all going into the gymnasium where they were going to be going to sleep. A guy peered over the wall at the back of the church, looked into the neighbor's yard. There was a teenage girl that was getting out of the jacuzzi going into the house. Homeless guy jumped the wall, went in, went upstairs, followed the girl into the restroom. And the girl screamed and fortunately got enough attention to where the mom came up and they were able to fight this guy off. Okay, so when you're looking at that situation, what happened is the church, they were doing what a church should be doing. As an insurance guy, I want to minimize liability for your church, but at the same time, I don't want to minimize the effectiveness of your outreach and what it is that you're doing as a church. So we want you to do these things, but we also want to make sure that you're adequately preparing your campus, adequately preparing your team, and being able to supervise the events that are at your facility. In this situation, they should have had better supervision. They should have had better guidelines for bringing the homeless on and making sure that they were going to be able to care for them. Another one, in Las Vegas, this was a little while ago. We have ongoing litigation regarding this one, but they got the wrong guy to be their security guard. And he had the wrong temperament, so when there was some punk kid, should I say that? Some creep, thank you, got it. Some creep was creeping across the church parking lot, and this guy got on his bike, had a mountain bike, rode after him, jumped off of it, tackled the guy, took him down, called the cops. Cops came, grabbed the kid, took him away. A little bit later, the cops came back. They picked up the security guy because he used unnecessary force, and he was a little bit rough on this kid. The kid may have deserved it, but it's ongoing litigation because now the mom is after the church and after the individual, and they're saying that he's using unnecessary force. And it was foreseeable because that church, they kind of saw the signs that this guy maybe didn't have the right demeanor, right disposition for being on a security team or being a security guard at a church, and they weren't addressing it. We can go on to the next slide. Actually, you know what? Do you mind if we go back 2 slides? Because there was something that I missed that I wanted to make sure that I talked about. When you're going to court, there we go. In court, regulation is through litigation. What's going to happen in court is they're going to say, okay, what are other churches doing? But they're also going to say, what are other similar organizations doing besides churches? you're going to meet the same standard of care, and you're going to be asked to meet the same standard of care as schools, other churches, theaters, events where there's concerts, large gatherings of people, concert venues. You need to meet or exceed the same level of care in all aspects of what it is that you do as other similar organizations with the similar type of exposures in your community. Because that's what, when you're deposed, if anybody's been deposed, that's what they do. They're going to ask you, you know, this church is doing this. Are you doing that? This community center is doing this. Are you doing that? And they're going to want to make sure that you're meeting that same standard of care. Okay, next slide, or jump ahead a couple. Okay, right here. The standard of care. Are you required by law to have security teams? No, but you're held to that same standard of care. This is something that I think is fantastic. This is what what FEMA put together, or Department of Homeland Security put together a couple of years ago. And this is the guide for developing high-quality emergency operations plans for houses of worships. What you should be doing before, what you should be doing after, and what you should be during any emergency situation. This is the standard of care that's on a federal level of what it is that you should be doing. If you look at this website right here, I think in an email that goes out, Ann, are you going to send an email out to everybody that registered? We'll make sure to include this link and a link to this guide where you can download it. Next slide. All right. If I respond and take action to a potential threat, will the church's insurance policy defend me? This was supposed to pop up, and it was a trick question, because some people say yes and some people no. It's yes and no. Okay? Next slide. You've got to look and read what it says on your insurance policy. And who is uninsured? Next slide. This is what it says on a typical insurance policy, is who is an insured. The church, executive officers, directors, employees in their employment, volunteers, while acting within the scope of their duties. Everybody else is just a guy in the pew or gal in the pew. But if you want the insurance policy to respond on behalf of the people that are going to be acting in a security capacity for the church, you want them to be part of that security team. You want to be part of that brotherhood. You want them to go through training together. Brotherhood, sisterhood, sorry. But it's a brotherhood of everybody together. So you want to have them go through that training together. You want to screen those people, and you want them all to be part of a team together. Okay, next slide. Okay, people ask about concealed weapons, and is there more liability? The answer to that is yes and no. I mean, there is more liability, but there's also less liability. You're almost meeting the standard of care that other organizations that have large gatherings of people have by having somebody that is armed at your church events. So you're going to want to have somebody, whether they are active law enforcement that's part of your congregation, or if you're going to bring an outside service. I prefer, I think, similar to the rest of the speakers today, is that it's somebody that's adequately trained, that's part of your ministry, that has the mindset of your ministry. I think is the best way to go. Okay. Also, you want to look and see if you're in a gun-free zone. How many here have schools at their locations? Okay, we've got about a dozen or so. Schools are gun-free zones. They're gun-free zones 24/7. So if you have a church with a school on your site, if church with a school, or if you're a church that rents from a school, you may very well be in a gun-free zone. Next slide. Okay, this one is a great book. It sells out whenever there's a shooting event. Go to Amazon. It's like $8. It was written by a great guy, Kevin Robertson. He's the head of security at Saddleback Church. He talks about developing your security team and selecting the right people for your security team. We don't want to go to the pulpit next Sunday and say, I went to this event that Salem put on, it was great. I want to put together a security team. Who wants to be part of the security team? All of a sudden you're going to get every knee buster showing up for free donuts thinking we're going to go shoot guns, it's going to be great. No, we want to develop our leaders first. Have your leader read this $8 book and have him select the people that have the right temperament, the right mindset, and that you want to have people that are strong in their faith, people that are strong enough to go and pray with somebody and kneel with somebody before they're going to go want to take somebody down. Next slide. Okay. This is another great book. This is, it's the components of, it's a full plan. It's a little bit beyond what's included in your packet. It's $40. We ordered, I think Brandon in the back has 20 that we're going to be able to give away to churches. And if we have more than 20 people that want them, we might just do a drawing, or maybe Brandon will order a couple more, right? But we'll get those to you. But they've just had to have another reprinting, and the reason why is because every time there is a shooting at a school or at a church, they all sell out. So, yes, sir. Oh, should we wait for the panel? We'll be quick. Go for it. It does not. Daycare or nursery does not. But check with local law enforcement about whether or not you're in a gun-free zone. Okay, but this is $40, and we've got about 20 of them. I know you want to throw me off the stage. I know. I'm waiting for it. Okay, next one. All right, that's it. That's everybody. We've got Brandon here in Sacramento. He's in the back. We've got Zach back there, Nancy Connell, Rob, all of our folks there from Church West. And you could, pardon me? Oh, she brought help? All right. Okay. All right. No problem.
Okay. And Brian, want to come up? You're getting phenomenal information. We've got a little bit more information to give you. I hope you look in their packet to see all the different things. Do you know how many security checks you go through before you ever buy a ticket at Disneyland? 7. You're right. Every time you go through a certain point, you are checked out. You are on video. In fact, Disneyland has videos everywhere except inside the stalls in the bathroom. Everywhere else, you are on video, right? And because of that, people think it's the happiest place in town. But look at Las Vegas. They used to think that that was the adult playground, right? I worked with 68 families that were at Las Vegas during the shooting and provided 2 law enforcement funerals. At that point, everybody was in condition white. Everybody was having a great time. And what happened? So wherever we are, our churches, our businesses, our homes, we are responsible. We are responsible for staying aware of what's going on. So gentlemen, I have couple of questions that people have texted me. Still not too late if you want to text. So I'm going to ask you the first question. I am going to ask you the first question, which was a great one. Should churches have armed security? Do you think churches should have armed security with all the information that we've been given? Do you think?
From a liability standpoint, I think it's a great question to ask, but it's one of the last questions to ask. I think you need to look internally at your team, see the makeup of your team, and see if you're going to be going outside to an outside service, go inside. I think you want to make yourself a softer target, but it's something that each church needs to look at themselves.
Okay, another question is...
Good, Byron. I'm not the only one with an opinion, but it's...
Oh, okay, go ahead.
No, I would just say that obviously with active shooter scenarios that oftentimes law enforcement response, is not as fast as people on site, and a lot of times the shooting is over by the time law enforcement gets there, often by suicide. So, that's definitely an arguable point because there are people that are pro and not pro firearms, but I would say that if I had the choice, I would rather, this is my personal opinion, not from my agency or anyone else, but I would rather have somebody trained who could respond appropriately and quickly before more innocent people are killed.
And of course, as self-serving as it may seem, we echo that when seconds count, police are only minutes away, right? It's just the hard reality of it. But it's just when we say that we tend to favor the notion of an armed security detail at any large gathering of people these days, it's important to understand that comes with a lot of caveats that pertain to staff selection, training, ongoing continuous training, and continuous reevaluation.
Yes. The right people, right training, yes.
The right people, absolutely, but...
We've also, something we speak a lot at in our different community meetings from a security company perspective, there's always that question, well, gee, do we even want armed security in our neighborhoods or our schools, et cetera? And might sound a little cavalier, but we've always said, look, we're in California. We're getting sued by somebody. So it comes down to, do I want to be sued by the family of my dead employee, right, for not allowing them to do what the law and our insurance agent allows them to do to protect themselves? Or do I want to stand in court being sued by the family of the suspect that came in to do harm? And if I have to pick one or the other, I'm going to stand in court staring down the family of the bad guy versus the family of the people I love.
Thank you. Next question, how can the church get free threat assessments? That was something someone mentioned. My church has security ministry. We have shirts that say security ministry. Are we required to be licensed? So those are two questions. How do they get the free assessment? Who do they call?
The Sacramento Regional Threat Assessment Center. The Sacramento County Sheriff's Department does that as a free service. So if you just Google that, that'll come up. Sacramento Regional Threat Assessment Center, and just give them a call. Tell them who you are.
Okay. And that second question in regards to my church has a security ministry, and we wear shirts that say security ministry.
Ultimately, it's going to be the Department of Consumer Affairs, Bureau of Security and Investigative Services that's going to be able to give you the finite answer to that. But based on that description, I would say that they're likely to fall under regulation. The other thing that I would say, and maybe the insurance industry can tell me if I'm mistaken or not, but I would also argue that in order to register as a proprietary security officer employer, it's $75. Right, every 2 years. And the training is not insurmountable. You're probably looking at $100 per head to get them state licensed. And so when and if liability were to be alleged, I think that you're in a stronger position to say, even if we're not required to, we went above and beyond, had these people state and FBI background checked, trained by a state licensed training center, and issued a license to engage in this conduct by the state of California, right? So just from a due diligence standpoint, whether or not you're required to obtain proprietary security licensing, I think it's a good practice and one that we'd certainly recommend.
Yes.
And just know that was very important to know that if law enforcement comes, I don't care if you're wearing a security vest, I don't care if you're wearing pins, I don't care what you're wearing. If they say, let me see your hands, you do exactly what they say. Show your hands, drop. You're a bad guy until they can tell you're a good guy, right? All right. All right, so how do we recruit volunteers? You tell us not to go at the pulpit and say, anybody want to be on our security team? How do we do this?
At our church, it really is the grassroots effort, and so we started off fairly small, and then as more people started to find out that we existed, then they would apply. We do background checks and whatnot, and then, of course, there's a vetting process. They have to get referred by other members of the church who can vouch for that person, and so obviously you want to make sure you have the person with the right temperament, right mentality for such a big responsibility.
And if somebody wants to be part of the team that maybe doesn't have the right temperament or skill set, they can be part of the parking lot ministry. They can still be eyes and ears. You just don't want the higher level security team to really be, they want to be selected, and you want to choose them, not them choose you.
You know, guardians are everybody, just like Sergeant Evans said. Guardians are all of the people that want to be a part of it, but you will choose the levels of where they're going to be and what they're going to be responsible for. We need positions, not people. Positions filled. So you don't want to always have one person calling the 911. It is constantly being aware of what we've got to do every Sunday instead of just doing it once, training once, and then going back into our mode of, we got this. The other one, another good question that they said is, and it went blank. We're having techno problems today. If somebody comes to your church, they're suspicious, they leave, where does the church, or how can the church call somebody? What do they do? If it's just something like they're just acting suspicious, but they really didn't do anything, what do we do? What does the church do?
For us, like I mentioned before, like we're in the city of Elk Grove, so we have a great relationship with Elk Grove PD. Same thing if you were in Citrus Heights or any other area, you want to really have a good relationship with law enforcement. You know, it helps if you have people in the security ministry that can help vet things out. But ultimately, if you have a good relationship, it doesn't cost anything. Call your local law enforcement, find out, hey, this is what happened. What do you think? And they're either going to tell you, don't worry about it, or we'll be right over, right? So don't worry about it. It's always better to report something, and if it's not a big deal, nothing's going to happen.
And to Byron's point, not all agencies suffer from the same ailments, if you will, in terms of staffing capabilities, average response times, et cetera. And I know there's probably a wide net here from different cities and counties. So you certainly could, do some research into what the average response times are for non-emergency calls for service in your area. And if that number is something that's uncomfortable for you, you can certainly look to, a private response contractor. Such as Paladin. We do about 65,000 call responses a year, about half of those relative to suspicious activity and suspicious persons. So there's certainly a lot of folks out there that do subscribe to a private response to at least get some triage level, boots on the ground to assess it, identify the person. And oftentimes that helps law enforcement. Oftentimes they're overburdened with non-emergency calls for service, and they really have to pick and choose, which ones are going to go to first, right, from a prioritization standpoint. So having that extra set of eyes and ears from the security industry able to respond first and then update law enforcement with their more trained, right, threat assessment than the lay citizen can also benefit them.
Gone are the days of a church or a school calling us and we say, oh, that's not a big deal. If a church or school calls, it's a big deal, and it's going to get looked into. So.
And please don't ever be afraid to call law enforcement if something is going on in your church. When they keep saying, see something, say something, unless they know there's no paper trail. And I'm going to tell you what, I had 43 pages of things that have happened just in Sacramento since January in our churches. And you don't know what has happened. If it hasn't happened in your church, it hasn't happened, right? But what's going on is a lot of times these predators are going from one church to another church to another church. Don't you think it's fine time that we unite as churches, having a private Facebook page or an email grouping or something, so we can let each other know when something is going on, and maybe they've passed you by because you're not so easy to penetrate, but they'll go to the next church because they're not as hard target as you are, right? I think we can do things to make us grow together and be united in this area too. Guys, one last thing from each of you to the audience before we let you go down. Sergeant James.
Take care of each other. Watch out for each other. Okay, we're like I was trying to tell you before, is we all have that ability to be guardians. Okay, so take that opportunity. If you have special gifts or talents that can help in those things, then get a hold of the right people in your church, and there's a place for you. Okay.
Charlie.
I just want to say thank you very much, Chaplain, and everybody. Thank you for putting this on and everybody getting together. And also want to make sure that people remember that church isn't just on Sunday mornings. It's 24/7. We've got to have our security that's available, really addressing things all the time. And the majority of the incidents that do happen at churches are happening at times other than during worship services. So.
Matt.
Well, thank everyone for coming out. Really appreciate it. I was very impressed to see how many people showed up. As most of the law enforcement folks can tell you, when we try to set up neighborhood watch meetings, you're lucky to get 3 or 4 people. So it's pretty phenomenal, the outpouring of support for this. The president of our training center has joined us, Sean Campbell, is right here. So afterwards, if you want to approach him or myself with any questions, we're happy to answer them. And there's a lot of materials on the various coursework that we can assist your organization with out in the lobby.
And I would just say, be strong in your faith, right? That's why terrorists do what they do. They're trying to scare you away from doing what you want to do. And we're here to come to church to worship God. So, you know what? Sometimes it's trials and tribulations. Can't let fear get the best of you. That's why we are here to make the church safe, so that everyone can continue to come to church and worship.
So you stay here for just a second. Victims focus on what they can't control. Survivors focus on what they can control. Victors focus on who's in control. We got a God that we serve that's in control, and the predators can't win. Amen? So I'm going to ask Mark if he would come up. I'm going to dismiss these gentlemen so they can go in the back so you can individually ask them questions. I hope you learned a lot. That packet has a lot of information in there. Our chaplaincy is one that goes to your church and gives a free consultation, an hour, to set you up for another way of training. So there's a lot of different ways out here that we're offering you. Don't sit on this. Don't get complacent. Now you've got some armor. Let's hear you roar. Amen.
Thank you, everyone. Now, I need you for 30 seconds. Absolutely, thanks to these gentlemen and lady, wonderful job. I want to thank our host, River City Christian Church. Phenomenal church. If you don't have a home church, please come and visit them on a Sunday. They're just the greatest. And so thanks for having us here again. They're a great partner, and we just love, and we love on them. We have, if you want to take 100 muffins or croissants home to your family, I know I don't want to take them to the radio station. You're welcome to the food, the bananas, the yogurt, etc. We have extra packets. So take them for your church people, take them for your homes, whatever. This is great information. A lot of work went into that, so thank you, Mindy. I want to thank Ann Meyer, our Director of Ministry, who helped put this on. She's fantastic. I want to thank my crew. Thank you, Ann. I want to thank all of our crew, Kathy and Colin and Sherry and Coach and Val and Lisa and Rob, if I forgot anybody, Judy, Ed up in the media, fantastic, just another great effort. But mostly, I want to thank each of you. We can't do it without our listeners and our partners. I thank you for all our sponsors. If you don't mind, I'd like to close this out in prayer. So if we'll bow our head. Well, Father in heaven, we thank you for this day and this 3 hours together. We're believers, many of us, in divine appointments. We don't know what's in store for us ahead in this day and the days ahead, but perhaps this information that one of us or all of us learned today will help us safeguard our churches, families, and community. You are a God of mercy and grace. We thank you for all the blessings you give us each and every day, and we ask these prayers and thank yous and offer them to you in the precious name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you, folks. Have a great day.